to be in the hands of Scottie Barnes a lot more. Is he
question.
prepared for that?
Great
Like Scottie Barnes is not prepared to be a primary ball handler on a team that's going to win a lot of ball games.
Wow.
Like that's just not. He is not ready for that role.
Unless you want Malachi Flynn.
No, that's
playing a lot more minutes. He might have to be.
That's the issue. I'm not saying it won't happen.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming a big part of why Darko Rajokovic is here is because he came in and probably sold them on why he can make that work.
Sure.
I'm just saying that is going to be a learning process.
You got to love it, right? Hockey guys talking basketball. This is the story of my life as a Toronto Raptor fan. TSN, stop it. Toronto Sun, stop it. Something is happening with this city and its media, and I don't understand it. I really don't. Like, how are you asking a 4-year NBA veteran in Jalen McDaniels if he's been to Toronto before? I understand that some questions can be taken out of context. That one was not taken out of context. He was genuinely curious if Jalen McDaniels had been to Toronto. That's confusing. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Summer League. The Raptors opened up Summer League, and all eyes were on Gradey Dick. And he showed a little good. He showed a lot of bad. Let's talk about it. We're going to talk about Fred VanVleet. Very interesting couple of days. I've thought numerous times about making a live. Kind of wanted to put a moratorium on Fred talk because really didn't want to be talking about Fred. I don't really want to talk about Fred. I actually watched his Pivot interview today. Loved it. Great. I don't know how much of it is true, but if it is even 90% true, great. I admire where he was coming from on that. And I also think I learned a lot more about how he grew up. Maybe I identify with a lot of it too. I lost my dad when I was early. I also warred with my stepdad. It made him a lot more human. Pivot is obviously my favorite podcast. I've talked about that many times. So it was kind of interesting to see my least favorite player in the NBA being interviewed by my favorite podcast. But it was a good interview. It was a really good interview. They kept it light. They got to the crux of it, and they got him to be really real. And at some point, I think he said there that it was just time to move on. You know, both sides just move on. And I was like, that's a great philosophy. Let's take that from Fred VanVleet. It was time to move on. Next chapter. So we're going to talk about Scottie's new PR rep, which is basically his head coach, Darko Rajokovic, giving a slew of interviews at Summer League to Eurohoop, talking about building this thing around Scottie. And what does that mean when you have a Pascal Siakam on the roster? It means the writing's on the wall. So we'll also talk about a couple of Pascal to Atlanta trades. We'll also touch on the Dame situation. Damian Lillard threatening not to show up if he's traded to any team but the Miami Heat. I call cap. But it's worth noting that this is really how badly he feels. So we'll talk about culpability in that situation. So first and foremost, well, not first and foremost, like most lastly, there was a video released today. I want to give you a little taste of it if you haven't seen it already. It was one of my favorites on this channel. I think we have absolutely touched on a couple of things that probably haven't been talked about in Raptor space. And I was really excited to do that. So this is a little preview of the video that dropped earlier today. If you were, just didn't catch it, didn't see it, definitely check it out afterwards. And I'll be back with you in a minute and a half.
Leonard as he goes up and does this. Or Chris Webber before he does this. How do some athletes bounce back from failures while others can't? How does boxing, MMA, and playing different sports help guys like LeBron, Pascal Siakam, and Allen Iverson? And how does Nikola Jokic always seem to see 2 plays ahead? Something is happening in the minds of these athletes, and I wanted to find out what it was.
Okay. All right, let's talk Raptors Summer League. What did I like? What did I not like? I'm going to start with the part I liked. I'm going to start with Marquis Noel, right? It started right away with that turnover right? He didn't hang his head. He got right back on defense. It's a tough one, right? Chad saying, yeah, thank you so much, man. You get off to a rough start. Obviously, it's your first taste of NBA action. You've been dreaming about this moment your whole life. Gradey Dick also got off to a little bit of a tough start, a little bit shaky. And I got to tell you, one of these players recovered a heck of a lot better. But worth noting, one of them is 23, the other one is 19. So I think take the good with the bad. I loved Marquis Noel's compete level. I liked his overall floor game. I like how he sees the court. I like that he competes on defense, even though he's giving up a lot of inches. I like the fact that he has such an intense skill package. He's burstier than I recall. He's clearly coming for somebody's job, right? He's been tweeting a lot of, bet on yourself stuff. And you know what? As I've mentioned it before, the Fred VanVleet spirit is great in your 15th guy. You want that guy. You want the guy on your 15th, 14th, 13th to be a killer. I think the two players on your roster that matter most in terms of their approach to work ethic is your worst player and your best player. Probably an unconventional take. But the worst player is kind of like, if he's doing it, how the hell am I not doing it? It is a weird inspiration, right? I think back to, and your best player sets the tone. If he can be coached, then anyone can be coached. So I'm not saying he's your worst player. I am, however, saying he will most certainly not start the season in the rotation, right? This is Summer League. Let's not get too high or too low. Obviously, against Summer League competition, you're going to have certain advantages you're not going to have against NBA competition. Namely, you're not going to get punished as badly on defense for being as small as he is. But what I saw was really good. Some of the passes that he made were advanced reads. Advanced reads. Man, I was just thinking to myself, if this guy was 6'2", 6'3", would he have been like an early lottery pick? Like I'm talking top 5 pick? Probably. At some point, he would have been top 5. Like this guy is just the skill level, the control of the basketball, even the shot, that deep shot that he hit late. It's really impressive, right? I know 23 is very late to be hoping for a growth spurt, but I think he makes up for a little bit of the lack of height with just really decent athleticism and a really good wingspan, right? He didn't feel that small. He looked that small, but he didn't feel that small, right? He has this like sort of shifty way of just completely changing the entire orientation of the defense. Gets into a little bit of a gap in your defense, and he punishes you by pushing it to the opposite side where you're not even looking. Is that going to hold up against NBA defenses? I have no idea. He's going to have to become like the deepest, most dead-eye shooter. But you know what? You don't bet against this guy. You just don't, right? He's shown time and time again throughout his college career that he is an insanely hard worker. And I'll be very much rooting for him. I think 9 of 5 games are going to be super fun to watch. Like, so fun. I'll start with, I'll go to another good. Overall, I liked the way the team played tonight. I know that it didn't result in a win, and maybe some people are pretty, upset about that because they're not really seeing a Scoot Henderson or a Victor Wembanyama on the other side, right? If you can't beat these guys, how are you going to beat, the series of lottery picks that you're going to be facing up against Detroit? I think Dalen Terry is better than people probably realize. And I think the Bulls had a lot of size across the board, which probably bothered the Raptors, right? But I liked how they played. Like there was an unselfishness. Let me know in the comments there if you felt just it was different than last year. Almost every instance of watching Raptors basketball over the last year and a bit was begging for people to make passes that were so obvious and they wouldn't make them, right? It happened a couple of times tonight where, you're missing Grady or Joe in the corner or you're missing an open cutter. But for the most part, like I think the passes that were supposed to be made were generally being made, or at least there was an attempt to make them. I liked Twan Harper Jr. Thought he had a decent game. I'm not really sure what to make necessarily of David Johnson. He didn't exactly get the most extended run. Moses Brown, like I've talked about him on the last live. Like this is a guy Mohammed Lay is asking, sorry to ask, but where can we watch Summer League, please? You can watch TSN and Sportsnet. So I hate to be plugging TSN or Sportsnet given the crap that they've been doing and talking about the last few days. We'll talk about that. We will definitely talk about that. This is a call-in live, guys, by the way. I don't know how long this one's going to go. Maybe an hour, maybe a bit, but feel free to call in if you'd like. Quick calls only, though. All right. Okay. Let me pull myself off here. So we got Ron Harper Jr. with 10 points. Raptors get off to a really big lead early on, right? The two rookies lead the way in terms of shot attempts. I really, not really sure what to make of Moses Brown, right? He's just so much bigger than everybody else on the court. But I think he played a good game, right? He had 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. He was really all over the place. He even, he made 2 free throws. It's just this one-handed, funky release, right? Watching him go up against Summer League is like, is this what Wilt looked like? You know what I mean? Like, it's such an outclassing. But I like the fact that they have him on the court because he is this guy who does a lot of damage in the paint. And in a lot of ways, he's a lot like Jakob Poeltl, right? I mean, Jakob Poeltl is a way, way better passer, player, etc. But having that sort of exaggerated lob target, screening partner, etc., it'll be good. And I hope that the Raptors have someone like that who can sort of mimic Jakob at every stage. I think it helps to play with size. I think he was just a man among boys, right? In terms of his ability to make the final roster, I'm not really sure. Mamadou Guy, not to be mistaken with the Guy on the Hawks, I believe. He was impressive in terms of running the court and just being very athletic and very disruptive. Again, David Johnson, not 6 minutes, right? 0 for 3, -15 in those 6 minutes. His minutes were really rough. Now, I remain a fan of David Johnson, and I'm not writing him off because of 6 minutes in Summer League. But year 3, man, this is like you're fighting for your NBA life at this point. I was looking at a video the other day of Draymond Green counting off every single player who had gone before him. 34 players had gone before him. This is just 10 or 11 years ago. 26 of them are out of the league. Careers are not long. It is often that we remember those 8 to 10 year careers, but most guys are out 4 or 5, right? So I'm not sure what David Johnson's pathway is to securing one of these 2 ways, but it does not look like the Raptors have a ton of belief if they're only playing him 6 minutes. I mean, they played Ahmad Kaver more minutes, right? Like, anyway, I thoroughly thought that Joe Wieskamp was a bit of a mixed bag as well. Like, he had 8 points. The shot looked smooth, but getting separation, moving with the basketball, there was like one really good shot that comes to mind. Overall, he's not really standing out to me the way that a player with his experience now, having 2 years of NBA experience under his belt, should have. So I'm hoping for even more from him. He needs to put up like a serious, because his contract's not guaranteed yet. They haven't, so he needs to really put up like a 25 piece at some point, just get really hot, really be disruptive on defense. DJ Hogg was generally all right. I think it was okay. I guess we all just want to know Gradey Dick, man. Gradey Dick. What are we thinking about Gradey Dick? So the shot, I think, will come. I think it's a good thing that he took the shots and he kept taking shots that he was supposed to make. Shooters are supposed to shoot. I would be much more worried if he was not shooting. A lot of people texted me and they said, hey, Rob, like, you were right about Gradey Dick, because I had this very exaggerated response on draft night of like, oh no, we screwed up, because infamously he was 18th on my board and I wanted the Raptors to pick Jordan Hawkins or Kobe Buffkin or just about a lot of players over him, right? Obviously, since then, I have watched a lot more tape on him, and I got to tell you, games like this happen with him. The 5 games that I really studied when I was evaluating him as a prospect, 2 of them really reminded me of this one, where he felt the step slow, he couldn't really get separation, the defense just really hugged him. Like, when you get to the next level, right, you are on scouting reports. You're a shooter, you wore the big red suit at the draft, everyone knows who you are. And that's the worst thing when you can't create your shot, is everyone's keying in on you. and this is your first, summer league action, and you're the lottery pick. And there's maybe a lot of guys who weren't lottery picks, and they're seeing you. And let me not even bring the racial component into this, because it is there for sure. And there are guys who just want to make you look stupid, and they're not going to give you anything. Like, they are not giving you an inch. The way that they were hugging him at times. Now, he did get open a lot, and he missed those too. I liked some parts of his game. I did not like others. So, number one, he feels very uncoordinated at times. His bottom is very heavy. Like, his legs feel very heavy. He has the build of like a baseball player, not a basketball player. And he's going to need to fix that somehow. I'm not a trainer. I'm not an athletic trainer. I don't know. I don't know how you're supposed to. You can see it. Like, there's no definition at the bottom of his legs. Like, he just seems a little bit like the lateral. His conditioning needs to go like next level, next level. That's the first thing. There were a couple times in transition where he didn't run back, where I was like, dude, like, you're 19 years old, like the last, and you haven't played basketball competitively in like over a month. Like, this is the last thing. Maybe it's one of those things where you just need to get your wind under you. I understand that. But overall, I did not feel like a hunger to prove something. That being said, he is a lottery pick. He does not need to prove anything. He has a guaranteed roster spot. I'd be much more worried if Marquis Noel didn't come out with intensity. But I think I'll trust the overall body of work with Gradey Dick. I've made this mistake before with him. I'm not judging him on one game. I'm not going to judge him on 2 games or 3 games or 4 games. This is summer league. People are keying in on him, and maybe it's just not necessarily the greatest environment for him, having to be one of the better players on the team. It's not really something that is conducive to his skill set right now. Obviously, the hope for the Raptors will be that, okay, fine, he can do 1 catch, dribble, shoot right now, right? Hopefully at some point he can do a crossover, pull back. That will be the next step. Because when he can do that, then it suddenly is the next level, right? The shot looked pure. The couple of times it did go in, it was good, right? He shot 3 for 12. He had 3 turnovers, 3 fouls, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals. Let's talk about the steals. This guy got his hands on everything. Did you notice that? I can't tell you how. I know that he was credited for 3 steals, but he probably forced or caused 5, 6, 7, something like that. It was madness. His hands were everywhere. Like, on the offensive rebound, he's poking at it. Defensive rebound, poking at it. Passes, he's poking at it. Very disruptive and very encouraging. That side of the court was really good. Made a couple of really smart passes. Nothing fancy, nothing Marquis Noel, nothing Scoot Henderson, but just smart passes, right? His help overall was really good. There were some good contests. There was, okay, fine. The point of attack stuff is not going to be great. They're having him guard the pick and roll ball handler, probably just to understand what his weaknesses are. It's very often that you'll put a prospect out there and sometimes ask them to do something that's a little bit above their heads just to see where are they right now. His strength and conditioning needs to go to like a completely new level for him to be, I don't know, getting 15 to 20 minutes a night. Someone texted me, and he's a friend of mine, so please don't take shade on this, but he said, what if Gradey wins Rookie of the Year? And I honestly think Scottie has a better chance of winning MVP than Gradey has winning Rookie of the Year. It is just such a far road that he has to take. It's not saying he's a project. He's not a project. But he has just this physical profile that screams to me like this is a guy who's going to average 15 to 20 minutes for you for the first couple of years until his body catches up, if his body catches up, right? But what I liked about him for the most part was his body language wasn't bad after missing, seemed to be competing, didn't seem to be fazed or bothered by really anything. He didn't do that emotionally reactive stuff that people do when a couple of empty shots, like shoot. You don't want to see that in a shooter. You don't want to see a shooter changing their form or whatever. Like, shooting happens. Like, really good shooters will shoot 20% one game, 15% one game, and then 78%, 80% the next game. It happens. Obviously, this is, if this happens 4 straight games, maybe we can talk about it. But I think he's going to pop off for like a 25 piece or a 20 piece at some point, and everyone will just breathe a little bit. That being said, how much weight do you want to put into Summer League? I don't want to put in a lot, to be honest. Like, I don't think that it's that important. Like, there are a lot of players who played really well in Summer League and just really struggled in the NBA. There are a lot of players who struggled hard in Summer League that have just dominated in the NBA. It's really to each their own. It's almost like a completely different sport. You're not playing with good players. A lot of guys are playing for their own contracts. A lot of guys are playing for spots, auditions, etc. There's a lot of people in the gym that may be watching you, and you most likely aren't sticking with the team that you're playing on. You've had 2 days to practice. I think Gradey's a system player for now, right? I don't know if the rest of it will come. But when you get him like a predictable diet of shots that were generated in past years for guys like Svi Mihalik or Yuta Watanabe or Armani Brooks or, I don't know, in recent years, Malachi Flynn, etc., I think he'll hit him at a decent enough clip. I think when you simplify his role and put him with better players, I think he'll be serviceable for 15 to 20 minutes. That being said, I'm still very worried about the overall like athleticism component of this. It just doesn't seem like a very fluid athlete. And I think that I don't know. There's just like a lack of coordination. He's very bottom heavy, but he's also very top big, like he's the anti Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is all legs and arms, no torso. He's the complete opposite. He's a lot of torso and short legs. It's kind of weird. It's a weird profile to look at. But I tell you, those heavy legs, those heavy feet, they have to quicken up a lot. So I think strength and training is going to be a huge thing for him going forward. And I hope that he'll have a better game next season. Shot looks great. It looks great. It looks very smooth coming off his hands. So, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the rest of it. It is too early to be talking about Scoot Henderson is definitely better than Brandon Miller, right? I would be crazy if I said that right now, right? Even though I've been saying it for like an entire year now. Scoot is better than Scoot showed up. Like he had something to prove, man. Like he really did. Today, he's been angry the whole time that he went number 3. He's so pissed off. And, to some extent, you love to see it. Let's talk about the Dame trade, right? Are the Raptors still in it? Should the Raptors be in it? A lot of people think that Scottie Barnes should be the guy going out. There's a lot of people who think that. The Score released a video. Obviously, the media is firmly on the side of like, come on, it's Dame. It's the same thing, man. It's the same thing with Kevin Durant last year. They just can't wait to ship this guy out. It's kind of something weird happening with the media right now. I'll tell you. I don't understand it. They've finally done something that sort of surprised me. I fully figured when the organization sort of showed that they were going to shift towards Scottie that they would stop what they were doing. They haven't. Will Lou goes on nightly sermons about why the veterans were actually the good guys. And then he swears he's not saying that he's picking a side. It's really weird. He is picking a side. He's picked a side. We know what side he's on. It's so weird when you are so impartial and then you claim that you're so partial and you claim to be impartial. It's so destabilizing to listen to someone spew the facts from one person's side almost exclusively. Forgive that one side, hold the other side accountable for something that they have no idea about, and then say, but I'm not picking a side. You're definitely picking a side. And the side you're picking is you. You're doubling down. You want to double down because you look completely ridiculous if you don't double down right now. I think this notion of like bratty kids not working hard enough, I don't know where this came from. I don't know how you can say with a straight face that Scottie didn't work hard enough, or Gary didn't work hard enough, or Malachi didn't work hard enough, or Delano didn't work hard enough. I think we've all generally accepted that Nick Nurse was a problem here, right? Most of us have accepted that he was a bit of a problem. So why don't you look at the people who were siding with him and ask yourself, why were they siding with the problem if they themselves were the solution? Does that make sense? I'm not saying the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I am, however, saying like this doesn't take a genius to figure out, right? Michael Grange reporting that he broke it. He broke it. The thing that we've been talking about in this channel for almost a year and a half. He broke it 2 days ago. Congratulations. Take a little walk down memory lane with me for a second as I tell you just how far back this goes. This is how far back this goes. That's timestamped, yo. May 20th. That was 2 months before the draft. June 28th. That's a full month before the draft. The draft that year was July 29th. Okay. So firmly on that, this kid's going to be really good. This was the first instance of me noticing that there was something wrong with Fred and Scottie, or Fred in general, towards his younger players. October 5th, 2021. October 23rd, 2021. December 16th, 2021. And there's like probably 10 messages that I didn't clip, 10 posts that I didn't clip in the middle. So I'm pretty firm on this, pretty much the entire way through. That something was wrong with how this team was communicating, and I think Fred affirmed it today. He said it just wasn't a good fit, and he left it at that. They asked him point blank, unfollow Scottie, unfollows you, you unfollow Scottie, all this stuff. They're saying you and Pascal didn't like the younger kids, and he just let it be. You know what? Good for you. What do you want? What do you want from him? You want him to say, yes, they were terrible? That would have pissed me off. So the alternative is you dodge it. You don't take the softball, because there's no more reason to throw them under the bus, you see? Because there's no more contract to be had. There's no more, what will someone think of me as the leader of this team if this is the team I'm leading? This is gone. The incentive is gone. So now he's chill. Now I can listen to him. I ended up listening to this guy's podcast, going into it spewing, thinking I was going to hate it. And I walked out thinking, great. This is the Fred VanVleet I remember from 5 years ago, that I liked that guy. He's back to himself. That's great. Let's all do that. Let's all get to a point where we can let that go, because I don't think it's helpful at this point. But you know what else is not helpful? Reinventing what happened. I don't appreciate that either. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that at the end. Darko Rajakovic on a bit of a press tour. He was at the Summer League. Obviously, Scottie was at the Summer League, talking more and more. Anyone notice Scottie just sounds like a completely different human being? It's not the new teeth, I swear. He just sounds like a different person. It's a completely different confidence, a completely different focus, a completely different tone, and everything is lead. I got to lead. Someone has emboldened him to say this. Obviously, this is also something that he's wanted. Where does that leave Pascal? How do you feel when you're like the best player on your team and you got a 21-year-old saying, I'm going to lead this team? Well, if you're not a natural leader, you say, phew, thank God. But if you are still somebody who is worried about the optics of what this looks like, and perhaps are concerned that maybe all NBA is going to be pretty much impossible if this guy has the ball more, because he's not going to pass you the ball every single time. He's going to look for three-point shooters, cutters, etc. So you're going to be just a guy who's going to get a lot of shots. I'm not really sure how I would take that if I was Pascal Siakam. I'm just being real. I'm trying to understand his side of it too. I don't know how I feel about that. That might rub me some ways. Someone's saying, what happens when you go out in the sunlight? I don't understand if that's a vampire joke, but cool story, man. Okay. pull up some trades. Would y'all do this? Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, Andrew Nembhard for Thaddeus Young and Pascal Siakam. Like, would you do this? Like, they have Tyrese. They have Ben Mathurin. If they can get Pascal Siakam there, that could be something. But let's keep it to Atlanta because, okay, you can't get Kobe Buffkin and you can't get DeJounte Murray. What about Bogdanovich, Okongwu, and AJ Griffin? Would you do that? That is an interesting thought. I think those two trades are interesting to me. On the one hand, I don't necessarily think you need to get rid of Pascal Siakam. On the one hand, I also think that you can't afford to lose him for nothing. You need to get a commitment from this guy. I don't think he trusts this team. And I think I know where it started. I think I know where a lot of this team's issues started. And I've known a lot over the years. I've talked about it on this channel. I've talked about it on Facebook. I've talked about it anywhere I could. Anything that I was allowed to share, I tried to share. Things going wrong with this guy and this guy, whatever. I think this all started, to be honest, 4 years ago when the Raptors traded for Kawhi Leonard. So 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's always kind of held me about how it might have worked. You know, Kyle Lowry was not the only person who was upset that DeMar DeRozan was traded. He was not the only person who was upset. There were a lot of people who were really close to DeMar who were extremely upset. They weren't upset because he was traded. They were upset that he was upset. It's kind of like a thing that you have when someone's your brother. And the feeling became, if they could do this to him, they could do this to me. In fact, Pascal Siakam has even said this twice on record and several times off the record, probably, if he said it twice on the record. This has to be something that has weighed heavy in terms of feelings and sentiments around this team. They did DeMar dirty. Masai did DeMar dirty. I don't think he did him dirty. Just a reading of what I understand happened. I don't think he did him dirty. But if somebody tells you, like the way that DeMar was hurt, the way he's talked about it, the way he's blasted it publicly in the press, he's been all over. I won't talk to him. I hung up on him. No need to talk to him. Every podcast he's gone on, he's talked about this. That hurts. That hurts not only if you're his teammate, but also if you're his friend. He says he talks to Fred all the time. What do you think they talk about? You don't think it's ever come up that he hates Masai or that he, has a grudge against Masai Ujiri for what happened or that he's salty? He still goes on and says that he, as with the Raptors, could have technically won a championship had he been here. That he and Dwayne Casey, had they stayed, they could have won, which is totally not true, in my opinion. But that's something that he still believes. If you believed what he believed, you probably act the way he acted. He feels like they cheated him out of a championship, which is just such a weird way of looking at basketball because the gap between him and Kawhi is so big. But maybe he doesn't see that. That's tough. But Fred and Pascal were DeMar's boys, yo. He was their vet. They frame so much back to him and Kyle. So if you believe that that moment becomes a pivot point for this franchise, yeah, sure, you win a championship. But you cannot break down a castle in one day. I'm saying the root, the chemistry, the development started to go down that year. You look at the very next year, you brought in a whole bunch of flyers. None of them worked out. Right? Sorry, guys. Hang on one sec. None of them work out. Aaron Baines doesn't work out. Stanley Johnson doesn't work out. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson doesn't work out. It's just a long list. It's like 4 years of just guys not working out. Malachi doesn't work out, right? It's just over and over. Yeah, you can say coincidentally, you can say it's exactly when Nurse took over. That's when everything stopped working, right? It's kind of where OG's game sort of flatlined. You want to know something? It's also where Pascal Siakam's game flatlined. Yeah, he's developed as a passer. But you remember the player who came into the year 2020, 2021? Like that guy, guns blazing? Like the hopes for that guy, when I saw him, the way he was playing, I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to make All NBA second team, like for the next 6 years. It hasn't happened that way. It's weird. Malachi, it's a lot of prospects. It's not just Malachi. Malachi was a really good player in college. I don't know how many of y'all watched him. He's a really good player in college. Like incredible. A shell of himself right now. Delano Banton, Nebraska. Like, I mean, I wasn't really like a big fan of his, but I studied his tape. Looked very good. Very promising. I certainly saw the rationale and why they picked him. David Johnson. He was a guy who was mocked in the 20s, man. He fell to 47. Fell hard. It's a lot of talent. Why is it not developing? Justin Champagnie, let me out. We have been very quick to scapegoat Nick Nurse, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, etc. But there's been rumors of things going wrong with this organization for over 3 years now. All the way back in Tampa. People not happy with this and that. People not happy with how they're being treated by so-and-so. It's always so-and-so, and it's always allegedly, and it's always some source. But I tell you, it's not stuff that you heard about a lot in 2015, 2016, even when things are going bad, even after the playoff rounds. Jama leaving, right? Oh, it's all Nick Nurse, right? We find scapegoats, right? And I think that's what the witch hunt is right now, is a lot of people trying to find a scapegoat for why their favorite player left and why their second favorite player is about to leave. And they don't want this to happen because this is very, very bad for the media, right? Another person that this would be perhaps devastating for, a rumor that has been circulating around the interwebs, is Masai Ujiri, someone whose contract is greatly influenced by the value of the Toronto Raptors. His last contract includes several bonuses, I believe an equity stake. I can't remember the exact details of the contract, but he is highly vested. He has a highly vested interest in this team remaining very valuable. Like millions of dollars of interest. Has that potentially ever swung his attitude towards a rebuild? Complete teardown, something that we were asking for last year. Part this guy out, trade this guy, call it day, draft Scoot, draft Wemby. One of these guys is great. Take the hit, build it up the right way. Is that ever? And you know what? I got to say, if he really, really wanted to, and it was allegedly on the table, and if it really was on the table, if your whole goal is this, selfish guy who just wants money, why wouldn't you trade Scottie Barnes for Kevin Durant? Scottie Barnes won Rookie of the Year, and Kevin Durant won MVP. Like, your value of your franchise goes up exponentially if you get a guy like Kevin Durant here for even a couple of years. Apparently, you could have had him for Scottie, Gary, and stuff. Why not? Why wouldn't you do it? I don't buy it. I don't buy that Masai Ujiri would do that. But what I do buy is what Goat said in his last video. Shout outs to Goateology. A really great point that he made in his last video called Dear Masai, and called it the IKEA effect. Basically, the effect is as follows. You grow attached to things that you build yourself. It's 100% true. There's so many things that we have made ourselves, like whether it's a pot or a cup, and it's objectively valueless, and it means nothing to anybody but us. But God help us if someone were to break that thing that we made in first year pottery class, our first ever. or God forbid, and people have a longer term investment scientifically in things that they've built up. Masai Ujiri must feel some sense of, I built this with Fred VanVleet. These are his guys. He picked them. He identified them. He nurtured them. He put them through the 905. He signed their first NBA contract. They were like, I don't know. Look at how they talked about Jakob Poeltl when he came back. It's like he never left. He was eating breakfast. They talk about these guys like family, like real family. I don't know if they intend to. I don't know if it's just slipping. I don't know if it's a lie. But man, if it's the truth, no wonder you can't. No wonder other teams don't want to deal with you. No wonder other teams can't get a deal done with you at the deadline, because you value your pieces so much more than everybody else. Nobody else has the identification that they found Pascal Siakam at the 27th overall pick, had him, go through the Raptors 905, have him, on tours at, with Basketball Without Borders and Giants of Africa, have him, bouncing with the kids up there, have him, win a champ. No other GM has that attachment to him except you. So how are you ever going to find anything that feels like fair value to you? Same thing with Fred at the deadline. Same thing with OG. I'm not suggesting you trade OG or Pascal really, but I'm just saying at some point this blind spot must be addressed, because rival general managers have been complaining about it for years. Masai Ujiri is very difficult to deal with. But what are they willing to part away with? Well, they don't seem to have any problem parting away with first-round picks, which is interesting, because first-round picks are a lot more valuable than guys like Malachi Flynn, right? 6'5" first-round picks are a lot more valuable than, because the Raptors have traded, Masai Ujiri likes giving up first-round picks more than he likes giving up player options. Now, I understand that these deals were necessary, but bear with me here. They gave up a first-round pick to San Antonio for DeMar DeRozan, right? They gave up a first-round pick, if I recall correctly, to the Memphis Grizzlies for Marcus Gasol. They gave up a first-round pick for Thaddeus Young. They gave up a first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl. The first-round pick is a sweetening, thing. They just keep going back to it. Okay, it's a first-round pick. We'll be good, right? Because these guys are amazing. I think it has become abundantly clear that Masai Ujiri overvalues his own players. Okay. Is he overvaluing Scottie Barnes? Are you among the Raptor fans who believe that if Damian Lillard is on the table, that you would trade away Scottie and stuff? Because you're going to have to trade away a lot of stuff, but it's a workable deal. You could trade Scottie. You could trade Gary. You could probably trade Thaddeus Young, Otto Porter, and Chris Boucher. You could make the salaries work. Maybe you can get a little something back. That probably beats the hell out of the Tyler Hero pick. He's definitely the best young player you're going to get back for Damian Lillard. And if you're Portland, you get to pair Scoot and Scottie. The two players that I wanted to pair in Toronto, they get to pair them in Portland. Would you do it? I wouldn't, obviously. He's my favorite player. Of course I wouldn't. But I mean, objectively, would you? Would you think you had a chance with OG, Siakam, and Dame, and Yak, and stuff? Maybe Gradey, maybe Malachi. I don't know. I don't know what else you have on this team that's remaining there. Maybe you get a whole bunch of veteran minimum guys who want to play with Dame. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't play for you, and now you've given up, an ex-rookie of the year and probably future all-star, definitely future all-star, but possibly future superstar for a guy who is very upset, 33 years old, and doesn't want to play for you. I don't know. I know how I view Scottie, and most of the internet swears that's crazy. But the way Darko Rajakovic and Masai Ujiri talk about Scottie is actually very similar to how I talk about him. And I find that to be a little bit like, whoa. You know what I mean? I understand you see greatness in the guy, but would you move him? Let's say, God forbid, I'm not saying God forbid, but let's just say hypothetically, the Spurs just loved Scottie Barnes and they gave you the first overall pick, Victor Wembanyama. Would you move him? Or are you already so far into it, As a fan, obviously, I would have a very hard time, if ever, moving him. I don't know how I would move a player that I believe in so much. But maybe that's the human emotion side of it of You can't have that as a general manager. And maybe it's a good thing I'm not the general manager of the Toronto Raptors. You know, it's really good to be objective about your pieces. I think that's what makes Jerry West and Danny Ainge so great. I really do. Like, they are very objective. Like, they could have a 4-year player on their team that they really like, but maybe, you know, to some extent, the Warriors have become a little bit like this with Draymond, Clay, and Steph. Like, they've won so much together, you know? Winning bonds people in a weird way. The Raptors may have only one championship, but they're the second most winningest team behind the Golden State Warriors for an entire decade of basketball. Like, I know this team has like a litany of terrible playoff losses and sweeps and embarrassing exits in its rear view, and only one championship to show and another Eastern Conference Finals to show and a couple of semifinals. I understand that. But you have to understand, over a sustained period of 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, with that core, a core which Jakob, Delon, OG, Siakam, Fred came into that core, but a core that really started with We the North and Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. That was a sustained effort, or a group effort, of nearly 5+ years to do something together. It's tough because you didn't do it together. You disrupted the pattern. You got rid of the one guy for that other guy. He was a mercenary. He left. And now everyone's like, what the hell? From the day DeMar was traded to the day Kawhi left, I think there was a pause in the bleeding. It's like you put on a really big Band-Aid to cover up the wound, or cover up the hole, or cover up whatever was left in this organization. And now they have had to pivot. To their credit, I think they have. I think they have done the correct thing. They have technically turned the page. Darko Rakovic, Jama, like all of these guys. Yes, I know Jama was there before, but the vibe feels fresh. You must start over. You must. And anyone who is not with the new vision must leave, unfortunately. I don't know how much I would trust Pascal. I don't know how much I would trust Masai Ujiri if I was Pascal Siakam's camp right now, for the exact reason that I mentioned before. And I know that he doesn't. And I hope at the time, regardless of what has happened, many times, you know, the media talks about how Masai had a tough talking to with Scottie Barnes. Do you know how many tough talking tos Masai has had with Pascal Siakam over the last 3 years? It would baffle you if you knew. Truly. He does this from time to time. He talks to a lot of players. When we single out players, we create a narrative that is not true. Nobody knows about Masai's talk with, let's not give names, but X player and Y player. No one talks about, oh, Masai had a talk with these 7 players. It's always this tough talking to Scottie Barnes, that guy. He had to address Scottie Barnes. It's brought up over and over and over. And this information, if not addressed, I'll take a quote from Fred. Rumors, if you don't address them, they just get too far. I'm paraphrasing, but that's just the truth, you know? And so now it's just gone too far. And there's this sort of vitriol back and forth about, are we willing to shift away from the only known commodity, only familiar commodity that we have? Because let's be honest, OG didn't play on that championship run. Are you willing to take the last thing from the last time you were good and go completely into blind waters with this Scottie, Gradey, whatever else? OG, Garrett, these are not your champions. None of them have championship rings except for OG. And, you know, he didn't play. Are you willing to turn the page? Now, as fans in this channel, we've been very willing to turn the page. But I try to empathize now with people who don't want to. The people who feel like they don't even recognize these people, that they don't identify with these people. Because the truth is, they've never won a round with Scottie Barnes. They've never won a round with Gary Trent. Maybe it's not Masai Ujiri that has the IKEA effect happening to him. Maybe he's not the only one. Maybe it's the media. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's the fans. Maybe it's this country that needs to be willing to turn the page on something that we feel like we were a part of, something that we came up with together. Because I tell you, whatever they did for you, they didn't do it for somebody else. They are your champions. They are this happy memory, but they are not Charlotte's happy memory or Portland's happy memory or Atlanta's happy memory. They're just a guy making $37 million who's not quite a superstar, or a guy who's making 17 or 18 million dollars, who's not a defensive player of the year and isn't on balance. These players are players. You don't value Nasir Little, right? You don't even know who Nasir Little is. Never watched a full game of Nasir Little, but I'm sure somebody out there thinks he's a really great player. You need to be objective about basketball. I think, especially in a GM chair. You have to be, otherwise you make really crappy decisions all the time. It's weird, when things work out, we gloss over everything. We say, they won a championship, it's over. They won a playoff round, it's over, right? We don't ever examine that things, when they go right, could have gone better. We don't. We just don't. Because the win and the loss become somewhat of a distraction. Now, I've been debating for the last 5 minutes and kind of vamping. I'm trying to think if I should do this. And I don't think I want to do this. I'm thinking about doing that Will Liu thing again, where I play his podcast and I literally rebuttal, correct, fact check everything he says. But the truth is, every time I think about doing that, it's on another place and another place and another place. It's not just on his network, which is Sportsnet. It's not just in Granger's articles, which is also Sportsnet. It's not just on The Score, which I don't think is Sportsnet. It's not just coming out via the Toronto Star and the Toronto Sun. It's everywhere. This entire thing is just we're going to miss Fred, wasn't the problem, couldn't lead this team, young guys didn't want to work. And they don't just say it out loud either. They don't just say it like that. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Hang on. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Hang on. I think it's just, it's got to be addressed, man. Someone's got to address this. I'm sorry. And I do remember the facts and figures, and I do remember what happened. And I'm not going to just allow this entire thing to just go and be uninterrupted. Let's just put it that way. Hang on.
Get ready for a new state of cool this summer with the all-new frozen Starbucks Refreshers
Okay, give
lemonades,
me
available
2
in
minutes.
3 thirst-quenching flavors. Dive into mouth-watering
Give me a
mango
minute.
dragon fruit, punchy
someone's saying
pineapple
Scoot
passion fruit,
greater
and
than Victor.
sun-kissed strawberry acai. Add to your summer and order ahead with the app.
Yeah, he also had 16 points the other day. Did you watch that?
Hello and welcome to the Raptors show. I'm your host, William Lou. Like Patrick Mutombo, for example, was here in Toronto.
Give me a minute. I gotta scan and find this.
Position, and then he's been able to go elsewhere and be an assistant coach and launch his career in coaching. John has done the same thing. We've seen, a couple other guys that have really taken that program going elsewhere. Like, Jerry Stackhouse started his career here in Toronto. The other option is you go all in right now. Right, you do the unthinkable. You put Scottie in a trade, which I'm still not really willing to do, but realistically, I can see the logic behind it. Put Scottie in a trade. You put it'll probably be Scottie team in the Eastern Conference right now, and maybe you only have
in the offseason. No, but your
and
options
whether that
keep
choice
dwindling.
is right or wrong, that's why you keep them or you fire them, right?
No, but your options are dwindling, and your last couple bullets to play here is Pascal and OG, because you just have to, based on where the roster is now, pick a path. Are you making that big trade? Can you make that big trade to win now, or are you
As the head coach, are you going to be able to make that next step? Are you going to be able to beat Boston? What's up, man?
No, I'm kind of on the fence about that. Like, I completely get it, but I'm also like, I look at Harden and it's like, it's a 1-year deal. And it's like, man, like, I don't trust Harden at all. Like, as
and I think and we're gonna.
And typically, I'm not involved in this process because post game, I'm always just to, and I think that's
okay. I'm gonna pull this up, and I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm gonna let him talk, and I'm just gonna stop it when I think that it's gone too far, and I'll just try to add my perspective on it. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to listen to a little bit of Lulu here. My bad, guys. All right.
News that I think was a little bit surprising, I think, to Jakob Poeltl. I did think that his expectation upon coming back to Toronto was that he'd be continue to play with both Fred and Pascal. And Fred is definitely gone. Pascal is already a question as to sort of when or not he's going to go. And, you know, I'm going to actually share a little bit of news on that as well. But I think, you know, that was his expectation coming back. But then again, it's one of those things where the timeline itself can get a little tricky, right? Free agency begins. Yak signs in Toronto. He was actually the first one to commit and make his decision. And then obviously Fred took his meetings, and you know, he had a much stronger competing offer. Like, I don't think there was any stronger offer out there for Jakob Poeltl, and so it made more sense for him to take the money and stay here in a franchise he knows and he's familiar with. But yeah, I do think it was a bit of a surprise. I think that's probably why I wanted to dig more into the idea of how he's going to form some more pick and roll partnership, how he's going to be used in different ways on offense. Definitely like the way he talked about, you know, the Spurs and how they orchestrated the 0.5 offense. That's something that Darko really wants to bring here to Toronto. And, you know, obviously who better to ask than someone from San Antonio who's got that direct kind of teaching from Pop. So, I mean, look, listen, I think Jakob's going to be talked to a lot more. Realistically, you know, in terms of players requested, you know, to come to the podium by the press. And typically I'm not involved in this process because post-game I'm always just recording the show rather than, you know, going to the core press reporters would like to request. And so I think Yak will probably take up a lot more speaking opportunities. Started in Toronto, went to San Antonio via trade. And I also think that, you know, there's been more reporting since then. I think first off, Granger's really been on the ball in this one. Like there's a lot of reporting that he's really brought to the situation. He even revealed that, you know, this season there was sort of this rift between the veteran players trying to lead the younger players, and that being a bit of a disconnect in terms of whether the veterans weren't leading in the right way or whether the young guys weren't really willing to listen. Regardless, the end result is there just wasn't much cohesion with the group. And, you know, I actually, I don't know. Sometimes I try to like hint at a couple of things on the show because, you know, for me personally, unless I have the ability to speak directly with both sides of the parties and come through with like this is the whole situation, and I could say that this party told me this and this party told me this. I'm not in the press reporting game like that. It's a personal preference of mine. It's not something that, you know, I don't know. It feels to me like that doesn't feel like that's part of my job, or that's not something that I really actively want to do. Now, I think for a lot of people, they might say, why not? Why is that not part of your job? Number one, I just don't really fundamentally see. I had a whole rant about this like probably 2 weeks ago about like, what is the point of all these trade rumors? You know, it's just sort of like gets you to, I don't know. I don't say it dehumanizes the players in that way, but what it does is sort of like gets you to get tired of players much quicker than I think you typically would if you were just able to enjoy them without the constant sort of how much do I value this guy, how much I don't value this guy, what I value this guy relative to another guy. Like it just sort of like, you know, it takes away, I think, from the focus on them just being basketball players and sort of enjoying the players on the court. But I totally understand. Like that's something that I have to do as part of this the job, and also part of it is this is the part of the enjoyment of basketball in general. So especially in today's age. So I understand it, but personally, I don't want to be one of those people that ends up like, hey, this is my handle. It ends up on some weird news aggregator, whether that's like a website or even nowadays just increasingly just a social graphic or even just a tweet itself. take out all the context. Now all of a sudden it's sort of like I'm driving these ideas around different people. Definitely don't want to be part of that. And so professionally, that's part of my reasoning for it. But again, like, just to go back to the whole idea before I sort of went on this tangent. Yeah, I mean, I remember several shows where I would hop on with Alex or with whoever, and we just kind of talk about like, the vibes in that room are not great. Like, and that's whether that's people going in there post game. And, I didn't do that much. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not part of the post game press conferences that often because I'm almost always doing the reaction podcast at that exact time while the lockers are open and while they're speaking to the media. But even when you hear through different people, right, that are linked to the players or linked to the coaches, like the reporting or the sense that you would get was sort of just like, yeah, like it's I described it in previous shows, like really quiet bus rides, really quiet plane rides a lot of the time. Game after games, like, you would see the veterans like really fuming, but the younger players really quiet and almost sort of just like not even bothered by like a really close loss or another blown fourth quarter lead. And
that is spin, right? Think about it. Think about what you just heard. Quiet bus rides where the veterans are fuming and the young guys don't seem bothered by a close loss. Now, if you listen to that, if you're one of those casual observers who doesn't have time to dig into the film, maybe you tuned out of the season and you're just kind of catching up now on what happened to that team. How do you feel about the players who are left here? And how are you going to cover them if they start out 0-5? I'm trying to get ahead of the story before it comes out again. And the story that's going to come out, I swear to God, if the Raptors start 0-5, these people are going to be pumping their Fred VanVleet wasn't the problem drums so hard, you wouldn't even believe it. They want to do it. They so want to do it. They want to prove you wrong. Oh, you dumb fans. You dumb fans. You booed Fred. You wanted to trade Pascal. You want to build around this immature kid who apparently doesn't care about winning. He wasn't in the gym after losses. He wasn't in the gym after tough games by himself shooting basketballs. No cameras, I guess. It doesn't count. It doesn't count if we don't see it. If Fred doesn't tell you in the media, it doesn't count. I don't even think I dislike Fred as much as I dislike this media space. I dislike the people in this media so much. It is like there are a couple of people in like the Philly media where I'm just like, I wouldn't meet that guy. And if I met that guy, I wouldn't shake his hand, But it's like with this media space, it feels like so many people are like this. Are they all in the same group chat? Do they all get their ideas from the same like fountain of misinformation? The young guys don't care about losing, but the veterans care about winning, right? But it was the veterans who had the contract extensions on the line, right? It's the veterans who were talking about roles being optimized to suit their stat, and this is not working for my numbers, and my number is going to be okay. That was the veterans. I don't remember Scottie's stat padding. Do you? I remember Gary gracefully accepting being shifted to the bench twice. I remember OG getting jerked around. This guy, I think if I let him continue talking, and you're free to watch it, whatever, listen to it. He goes on to say that OG was given plenty of opportunities early in the season and he didn't show up and the team was struggling and Fred took over. Need I remind you that the Raptors started 500 and stayed 500 until Pascal came back? The way that he tells it, he cherry picks. He picks like look at OG's turnover percentage on drives. Look at Fred's finishing percentage on drives, bro. Like, why are we cherry picking? Aaron Rose, someone I've talked to a few times. My God, man. You picked up like this one arbitrary stat of like this number of post-ups, Scottie was the worst. And it was like, bro, like that number of post-ups, he was like, comparing him to all centers and like mainly like superstar guards. Yeah, he's going to be less effective than those guys. I didn't see a lot of bums on that list, right? But then you just completely gloss over in your Fred fandom that not only was he on a very elite, it wasn't like I cherry picked the top. I wasn't like, okay, of all the people in the league that took 1,000 shots, he was the bottom. I didn't do that. It's like of all the people in the league that took any amount of shots, he was at the bottom, bro. Like, why isn't that information put in the same light as Scottie's post-up percentage, mid-range shooting percentage, right? Because if you only hear one thing about a person, that's all you're going to actually know about them, and that's all you're going to focus on them, right? We talked about that in the neuroscience video. We judge people by the absolute worst thing that we know about them, right? Or the best thing that we know about them. Typically one or the other, right? That's the person who works at Google. That's the person who was fired at Google, fired from Google. That's the person who made $1 million. That's the guy who lost $1 million. That's the guy who put on 100 pounds. That's the guy who lost 100 pounds. We tend to think in extremes, and our minds are sort of moving more and more towards that. And so we naturally buy into this good guy, bad guy narrative. I'm just kind of curious, once again, how they got the story wrong. I don't think, look, I'm willing to stop doing this. I am. If y'all stop lying, like, that's all I want. Is that too much to ask? Just stop. You don't think it's hard? You don't think Scottie and Gary care about winning? I mean, did you see their faces? They don't care. They don't care. OG doesn't care. Getting yanked, fourth option, third option, second option. Hardest working player possibly in the league. I got tired just watching OG, man. Scottie and OG worked so hard, and yet they got constantly dogged for the things that they did not do well. Everything was Fred and Pascal are doing everything right. Everyone else is doing everything wrong, right? And if you were on their side, you were in the club. You were in the club that was protected and shielded from the mass media scrutiny. You were a leader. You were a professional. You had a good work ethic. If you were not in their little club, they buried you. You were a bum. You hadn't progressed. You don't work hard in the off season. You don't care about winning. You got bad defense. Yo, bro, Gary's defense did not just get bad in like 1 year. It was pretty much always bad. Y'all are just overcorrecting. Do you remember 2 years ago? It was like a year and a half ago. it was a year ago. This offseason last year, I went and I said Gary Trent's like the worst defender in the starting lineup. That's before this season even happened. So I didn't watch him do it. I told you he was bad. And now it's like, oh, his defense has fallen off a cliff. His defense wasn't that great to begin with. You're just noticing it now because you're losing. It's so insane to me when I listen to or I'm forwarded, thoughts by other people about this channel being entertainment, propaganda, whatever. But they present themselves as true basketball analysis because they don't talk about the politics of it. They don't talk about what's going on in the locker room. Only lunatic Pensera basketball does that. But you know what? They don't talk about the politics. They are the politics because they present one side of the coin. You don't think it's political to say that that Fred VanVleet is not failing the Raptors are failing Fred VanVleet? You don't think that's political? That's a very political shoot, man. Like, I think if Josh Lewinberg ever gets fired as a sports reporter, I know a political campaign he could definitely spearhead. It's weird to me. These guys have moved on. This team has moved on. I think we as the fans need to move on. But it's hard for me to ignore all of the misinformation being spewed out now because I see it. I hear it in the Twitter spaces. I hear it and I see it in the tweets that are being forwarded to me. I see it in the comment sections on other videos. I see it in other content creators. That there is a serious doubt about what turning the page for this franchise will mean. And I know that I'm just guessing and pontificating and assuming, just like anybody else. But from what I can tell, your organization will always benefit with good people leading it. And I sincerely believe that the people that they are choosing to side with in this dispute are the victims of this dispute. The people who tried to do the right thing. I think there were games where Scottie was just like, all right, you're not going to pass me the ball like that? All right, I'll give you the ball as much as you freaking want. Gary just takes it like a pro, gets benched, no problem. Gets called out in the media, no problem. He didn't disrupt anything. He didn't throw a tantrum. I appreciate that about him. So I just think that it's really difficult to be the victim of a situation and then be mislabeled the perpetrator of the situation. I can't even imagine how difficult it was if you were a proponent of team basketball to watch on the bench last year as people basically hijacked the offense in order to pad their stats. And now you're being called unprofessional because you didn't care about winning by this Oompa Loompa here. Bro, stop it. Like, seriously. It's frustrating because I know how many people listen to this podcast. It's not as many as it used to be. Maybe take a clue on that. Check your ratings, bro. They're going down for a reason. People are tired of being lied to by you. That's I'm sure someone's going to clip this and send it to him. People clip everything from the show and send it to everywhere. So, all right, bring on Coach Mo. Coach Mo, it's been a long time, bro. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just came in to listen to the end of that. And there are people who are worried, well, how are we going to move on? And I just want to say, the 2 playoff games we won against the Sixers, Fred didn't play. When we made that last season push to win 48 games, Fred was injured. Either he was not playing or he was playing poorly due to injuries.
Mm-hmm.
It was Pascal and Fred who led the way.
Pascal and Scottie.
Pascal and Scottie, yeah. And that's when they really tried the big wings running point, like out of necessity, because Fred was literally breaking down. So we had no choice. Scottie, you can argue Scottie won Rookie of the Year and played his best basketball because Fred got hurt, and we had to lean into him.
Don't let Josh Lewenberg let you hear that. Don't let Josh Lewenberg hear you say that, because he is going to say that Fred VanVleet wanted to give Scottie Barnes Rookie of the Year. Somehow he will spin it in his positive direction, I assure you.
I mean, Scottie wasn't winning Rookie of the Year when Fred was making the All-Star team. That wasn't happening.
He was close. He was second.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to win it. And
I think Mobley getting hurt helped also. I think the Cavs free fall in the lineup helped it. I tell you, like I talked to a few people who had a vote as I was drumming up the Scottie propaganda at the time, and I was trying to send them like videos and giving them all the stats and like, hey, look at what he does against really good teams. This was present even in his first year. You could see it. Against Luka, he was different. Against Domantas Sabonis, he was different. Against Detroit, he sucked. So it was interesting to watch that. But I tell you, 3 or 4 weeks before the season ended, I messaged a few people. All of them said they were going to vote Evan Mobley. All of them.
Well, the thing with Mobley that hurt him was Allen went out at the end of the season, and the defense plummeted. So a lot of people's idea of who was the most valuable big for the team kind of switched, because Mobley came back, and they were just on a free fall. And they were like, wait, was Allen really that important? Because he did make the All-Star team, right?
Right.
So I think Allen going out really showed his value.
I think so. Yeah, it did. And I think Jared Allen has always been like this really underrated defender who's like great. Would you trade Pascal for Darius Garland? Just curious.
Of course. Easy. Easy. The problem is now, but when you do that, you got to get rid of Gary.
You see Darius Garland as a 2?
No, I just don't want 2 defensive liabilities. I'm good with 1. I don't like 2.
Yeah, me too.
And Garland can't play defense to save his life. God bless him. He can drop 50 on any night, but that dude's like 180 pounds.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, what do you think this Scottie at point guard thing's going to look like? Personally, I'm good with it. Like, I think he's going to be surprisingly good at it. But I do hear the criticism, and I'm objective about it. There is certainly stuff that he's going to need to get better at. Yes. I think from what I've witnessed, the handle feels a little bit tighter than it was, say, 2 years ago, which is like, thank God, right? But the shooting, the lack of shooting, if that doesn't come for him, Darko Rakovic was on Summer League today, and he said sometimes you have to take a step back to take a really big step forward. And he seems to think, and I think a lot of people around the league, well, I want to say around the league, but around this team, think that Scottie is ready to take a really big step forward with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
But I'm not oblivious to the fact that players who don't shoot super well sometimes have trouble with the ball in their hands. I do want to say, however, that they have even more trouble when the ball is not in their hands.
That's what I was going to say. He's a rhythm player. And
yeah,
right,
that's
a lot of the frustration from last year came. People weren't touching it for multiple possessions in a row, and then it's like, do something, and it's like, I can't. So
yeah, no, I'm hoping for
the guy
help.
who had the ball in his hand the entire time still would shoot below 40%, so it didn't even matter.
I mean, if the Raptors do go with this, and I think that they absolutely will, they're the biggest starting lineup in the league.
Yeah,
no one's talked about that yet. They are the biggest starting lineup in the league, unless like the Spurs do something legendary. But even then, I know Victor Wembanyama is big, but he's not like big. You know what I mean? He's tall. He's not huge. Like this team is huge. Like Gary's got, I'd say, decent-ish size. If you start, like, let's just say
he has weight to him. He has some girth.
Yeah. Like he's a big dude. Like he's got tree trunks. Like he's got 6'9" wingspan. Like he's a big guy for a two guard. Like he's never been undersized for a two guard. He actually played small forward and power forward a lot with Portland and even at Duke. I think like there were a couple games where he played 4. His dad's obviously a 4 or 5. So this is a decent sized guy for 2. No one would ever confuse him for undersized. Scottie's the biggest point guard in the NBA immediately, unless Ben Simmons is still a point guard, which I don't think he is. Siakam's got decent size. OG's a huge small forward, and Jakob's a huge center. Vision 6'9" is alive.
Yeah. And I think
most of the guys off the bench are huge too. I mean, Dennis Schroeder's small, but he's 6'1", but he's 6.
You see Daniels getting consistent minutes in a big role?
Dude, I think it's on him. Like whatever he wants to do with this, he's got the shooting.
I like him.
I like him too. I do. I think he's got some. He's, I prefer to take a swing on someone who was like a late pick or a second rounder who had to work through some stuff to hang, right? Because no one gave you shit. If you were a second round like pick or an undrafted guy and you made it to year 4, salute. You definitely won some people over with your hard work. If you're a top 7 pick who just hasn't worked, like Killian Hayes, and you made it to year 4, like no shit, you made it to year 4. They all make it to year 4.
Yeah.
It's usually year 5 when then they're like learning Taiwanese, right? So I think that's a good thing. Like there's been sort of an uptick. I like his shooting a lot more than I like his numbers on shooting. And I like his defense a lot more than I like his analytics on defense. The tape on him feels better than the performance.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 15 minutes a night. I also wouldn't be surprised if he gets no minutes. Like if Otto's healthy, I think Otto's better.
Yes, Otto is better. He's more ready to contribute. What do you think of I don't think there's enough minutes to go around for Koloko, Boucher, and Achua. Those 3. One man's going to be the odd man out if there are no injuries. Like one's the odd guy out.
I think it'll be Boucher.
I don't think you can play them all.
Yeah, I think the Raptors have like this poo-poo platter of prospects, right?
Yeah.
And we become very invested in our own prospects because obviously like we I think all fans are like this, right? We've often talked to other fans of other teams on this channel, and I'm just flabbergasted at how they feel this way about the players that they have, right? Like you talk to someone about how they feel about Jaden McDaniels, right? Oh, that's that's gonna be a future defensive player of the year. Untouchable. Like, wow, really?
Trade, or the Gobert trade, untouchable.
Yeah. So it's like, you build up this expectation as a fan about what this guy's going to eventually do for your team, but other people don't have those expectations. They simply do not look at them that way. And that's why, guys who continue to meet expectations tend not to get traded. That's just, there's a gap. There's always a gap between how you view your team and how the other league views your team. So I'm curious how the league views these assets, because we've been told for years that, there's multiple picks, 3 first-round picks available for OG. I have no doubt that OG's value is still very high because he can literally go anywhere. I'm very curious what the value is for Pascal Siakam, because depending on who you listen to, it's all over the place.
Yep.
You know, it's either every freaking team wants to pair him with their lonely star, or everyone just thinks he's massively overrated.
And all the teams that are interested in Pascal, would you regard them as top tier organizations?
Well, that depends who's interested in him. Atlanta? Who else?
That's about it.
That's what we've heard.
There was always rumors with Portland, but I don't think there was anything real with Scoop. Like, there was nothing real ever.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some confirmations that Portland was real with OG.
Yes, because Dame said it himself. He wants OG.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But I mean, what team? If you could think of a team where Pascal fits, that's not Atlanta, where would he fit for you?
Well, before Porzingis got there, I would have said Boston.
Boston for Jalen Brown.
For Jalen Brown, I think he works better with. There's more playmaking. Jalen Brown can't play make. Like, it's rough for him. Like,
Siakam can't shoot right now.
Yeah,
so
I mean, did you see Jalen Brown shooting numbers towards the end of the year?
I mean, towards the end of the year is one thing, but yeah,
like
he's
Fred VanVleet can't shoot, but can he? Like, you know, it's that kind of thing, right?
Right.
It's like, it looks good, but is it going in?
What else?
I mean, that's tough.
Right. Like,
because
you go down the league.
The number one guy has to be able to shoot. The number one guy has to be a knockdown shooter, because he can't be the number two to like a Zion or a John Morant. Right?
Okay. I'm gonna give you all the teams, and you tell me. I'm actually just gonna scroll it on the thing. So the Lakers.
No, they have AD. He's just an AD so much better.
Warriors.
As a Draymond replacement, yeah.
I mean, what are they trading?
Wiggins. I mean, do you want Siakam and Draymond Green on the same team? The answer to that?
I mean, you already have Wiggins, and how is Wiggins that much different than Siakam? It's just he's a better playmaker. He's a worse athlete.
I'm assuming Wiggins is in the trade, because what else do we want? We don't want Draymond Green.
Yeah.
So that's
someone's saying Buffkin looks good right now. Yeah, no shit. Sorry, I'm kind of like figuring out like how I feel about Gradey Dick right now. Like,
what about Embiid?
Embiid?
Yeah, so I mean, pairing him with Embiid, so it's like Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris for Siakam, and send them back to Nick Nurse.
I think it depends on. Okay, here's a random question. Would you trade him for Harden and picks, provided they have picks?
How many picks?
2, if they have them.
Okay, does
I don't even know why they do that. Harden's a better player right now.
Harden,
but not for long.
Player. Yeah, not for long. And is he? Do we talk to him about this is Scottie's year kind of thing, or are we just gonna put the ball in Harden's hands and watch him shoot 100?
Honestly, man, like here's a problem with Scottie. You can't do that with him. That's what I've noticed. You can't just tell him there's a better player on your team, but we want you to get reps. He can't do it. Like, something in his brain just seems to not want to do that. Well, and you appreciate that, don't you? Because how many players have we seen, like Russell Westbrook, where you're like, bro, pass Paul George the ball. He's clearly the better player, but he won't, right? I wish more people were like Scottie in this exact sense, that they would always look for the best shot and always defer to the best player on their team as their real first option. Problem is, you put a real first option with this guy like James Harden, and he's definitely going to defer to him. Now, some people in this media space think that that's not very alpha of him. I think that's actually very smart of him.
But just what I meant to say was, we're not doing the Houston Rockets basketball thing, right?
Yeah,
which,
that's true.
But what other teams? Dallas. I mean Dallas,
Well, they just missed out on Matisse Thybulle, but
which
they
would
don't
have been
really.
great for them.
It really would have been. I mean, Grant Williams and Matisse Thybulle, like I was ready to award them as like having 100% off season. Like they've just done everything right. The only thing they didn't do right is get Matisse Thybulle, and they didn't even do it. So,
would you have done the trade with the Suns that they got Bradley Beal? I think it was like 3 pick swaps and like
it's a terrible
6
deal.
seconds.
It's a terrible deal. They got nothing. They got absolutely nothing back, man. No.
He would have been better. He would have been the better third wheel with Booker and Durant.
Someone asked, could you get RJ Barrett from the Knicks? But I'm like, yo, like they already have Randall. And why would you want RJ Barrett? Is a really good question. The Nets feels like, okay, this is where you can get interesting. They have a bunch of picks, right?
Do you think you can try Cam Johnson? I mean, you're not getting Bridges, but could you get Cam Johnson?
I think it would have to work around Cam Johnson, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, picks, and Ben Simmons' contract.
Okay.
And then you waive Ben Simmons or something.
Okay, you waive Ben Simmons. Okay, you bring in Nick Claxton. What are you doing with Poeltl, Koloko, and Claxton? What are you doing with those 3?
Running the greatest volleyball team of all time, bro.
You're just going to put them on the court and tell them to lock arms?
Exactly. No one will ever score, ever. No, I understand. But, like, I mean, look, there was a very interesting point that was brought up in, I can't believe I'm saying this, but a very interesting point brought up by Willu, and something that I brought up, ironically, before him, which is that they signed Jakob Poeltl before they let go of Fred VanVleet. Now, here's something that I think is worth asking that has not properly been evaluated. How serious was the offer for Fred VanVleet? Heard him talk today on the Pivot podcast, and I think that he didn't want to go to Houston. That was the feeling I got. If I take him at his word, which I have difficulty doing given how many times he's capped, right? Like he said straight up, if you need me to say it, I'm going to say it. No one has ever offered me a contract. Now it's confirmed he was offered a contract at the beginning of the year. Like, come on, bro. Like, we remember. I have the memory of an elephant.
He said no one offered him a contract?
He said that he doesn't know where this thing came up because you remember Josh Lewinberg released this thing about how he rejected 114? Yeah. And it was all over the news. Oh, my God, I rejected 114. Go check his presser the day after that news story broke. He straight up said, nope, never did it. And now it's confirmed. That is exactly what happened. And you know what's ironic? He was really upset. I heard that he was really upset with himself halfway through the season after his season was going so badly that he had rejected that contract. So he obviously felt that he was worth more than what was offered then, which was a rumored 114 for 4. Now imagine if the Raptors had actually offered that to him. Now what I'm willing to ask is this. Let's just say that offer was actually his bargaining chip, that he felt that offer would be there. And let's just say hypothetically it wasn't.
I mean, yeah.
Because from what I'm gathering, from what he said, and you know, they asked him, they said straight up, when did you know that you were leaving? And he's like, a week ago. He's like, I always thought I was going back. Like I was committed to coming back. And then it's like, and he kind of said it, like, I've learned to listen to Fred. Like I know how he speaks. Like I understand the legalese and the politicking in his words. And I know what he's trying to say. He's saying, they didn't make me a serious offer. He says, I had this other offer. He's like, but I'm looking at the numbers and it's not matching up. Mm-hmm. He said that. He said, it's not matching up. As in, it's not matching up with the value that I hold myself to. Now, whatever he thinks he's worth, fine. Maybe the Rockets bid against themselves. But I am very curious about one thing. If Fred VanVleet was generally and widely regarded as the fan favorite, leader, and whatever the media had tried to build him up to, if it had succeeded, let's just say it had never been challenged, no one had a critical thought in their mind, he hadn't gone on a terrible shooting stretch, he really is the last vestibule of great performance that you have from the finals. He's a big part of that. He's the underdog. He's the undrafted guy. Could you imagine going into free agency and them just basically giving him a blank check and being like, okay, if you got a max, we have to match the max. We can't. I think that this fan base turning so heavily against him made it impossible for them to offer something that was absurd.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of his value, who were the Rockets bidding against with Dylan Brooks for $20 million? Who was their competition there? Right? I mean, like,
honestly, that is even worse. Here's something funny. I don't know if you listened to the Mismatch on the Ringer. They had the funniest take on this. So Chris Vernon covers the Memphis Grizzlies. So he watched Dylan Brooks all year, covered all his games. He said, and I quote, this is the funniest quote ever. I think like I'm funny about Fred VanVleet sometimes. This guy was so funny about Dylan Brooks. He said, the Lakers guarded him like he had SARS.
Yeah, no, it's true.
He was 50 feet away from him. Like, go ahead, bro.
It was like Russell
Westbrook
treatment. It was Russell Westbrook treatment.
It was worse. And he, like, oh my God. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Like, it's tough all around. It's that entire team. But you might be surprised to hear this, but I listened to Fred's pod today with the pivot, and I walked away with a lot of closure. I walked away thinking, you know what? I get it. I understand it. I fully empathize. Losing your dad when you're that young, not easy. Being at war with your stepdad, not easy. I relate to both those things. Growing up, trying to pull the better life for your kids than the one that you had, I fully relate to that too. Everything that he said felt so human. And I was like, where was this guy for the last 2 years? Where was he? I don't know.
I think it's going to be easier to cheer for him on another team. Like, it's going to be interesting watching Houston. They have so many, like, the thing, like, Fred has to do a lot of growing up because, the whole golden boy, young guys, all that. And that's all the Houston Rockets is. You thought Scottie was bad. But whatever your perceptions of Scottie were, there's Jalen Green. They just got Thompson. They have Şengün. They have Jabari Smith. I mean, these guys, they have like 5 golden boys. So I think people talk about Scottie needs to grow up. I think Fred's going to have to do a lot of growing up and have a lot of patience at his next stop.
Yeah. And you know what? I hope that he will do a great job. I really do. I really hope for those kids that are there. You don't want careers derailed, right? Because somebody comes in and, destroys your career, politicizing or whatever. There's really nothing more to gain from this situation other than to prove that you are a great leader, that you're everything that they said you weren't here, right? Like, and he can be. He's so smart. He's so remarkably composed. When I was listening to him, I was like, wow, what a level-headed dude. So smart. He's talking about this and that, and I'm like, man, like, if viewed out of context, if I heard this conversation, I didn't know it was him talking, my first thought would be, I'd love to be friends with this person. They're so remarkably composed. They're so hardworking. They're so focused. They're so driven. They're so committed. They're so family-oriented. They're so humble. He sounded so humble. It's amazing what a spin that was from the person that I listened to the last 2 years in all those media scrums. Completely different person. Like, I was calling it out in 2021. Like, every comment was about younger players, this, I didn't do this, my numbers this. And it was just like, it was irritating. But now listening to him after he's been paid, maybe that, part of his soul that's like insecure or whatever, or maybe feels he needs to defend itself is now quelled. But they brought up a really good point on the Pivot podcast, which was, does this add so much pressure now? Are you ready to be a $43 million player? That's the part of this that people don't fully gauge. That when you sign on the dotted line, granted, it's the organization that signed you on that dotted line. You know how much shit guys like, God damn it, who was that athletic white guy that got signed to the really, really good deal and then just was like out of the league in a few years? He was super athletic. He was a wing player. I'm forgetting his name.
What team was it?
I can't remember. Damn it. He was North American. He's a North American white guy. All right, let's play trivia, chat fam.
It's not Birdman. It's not Birdman.
No. He didn't get a big contract ever. We're talking like massive contract. I think it was with the Houston Rockets.
You're talking about the Timberwolves. You're talking about the Timberwolves.
No, I'm not.
The center, the big guy.
Chandler Parsons. There we go. Got it.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember how much shit that guy got for like the contract he signed? What about Gordon Hayward, right? Granted, he had a tragic injury.
Both those guys' bodies just broke down like severely.
I think Chandler Parsons was a little bit overrated personally. I think he got overpaid massively. Alan Crabb, that's another example, you know? I mean, even look at the Toronto Raptors, how we treated Hedo Turkoglu. I mean, granted, his contract's not big now, but back then it was a big contract we gave him, right?
Mm-hmm.
We hated him because we're paying him so much money, you know, paying him this much to be a bum, right? There is some sort of weird, you know, psychology of like the more money your team is paying this guy, the more you think, and this is the kind of crazy thing about being such a shit team like the Houston Rockets, is they have to overpay for anybody to come in. They have to overpay Jock Landale. Why would anyone come to that team and, you know, be there, right? It's a great city. Yes, it's a great, you know, tax haven to be in. But I don't think anyone wants to be a part of that organization because people talk. People know who Raphael Stone is. They know who Tillman Fertitta is. So
yeah,
I'm looking at this like, if you're a Houston fan and you see this guy $43 million,
Dylan Brooks $20 million,
like you're gonna be booing these guys, you know? I don't know. That's tough. And you know what? Kudos to him for even signing that contract, because a player of his talent level, I mean, there's not shade. That's tough. Like, that's a massive overpay by any stretch. And for him to sign it and just take on all that pressure, this guy really doesn't give a fuck.
No,
it's awesome. It's kind of awesome.
He is swinging so far ahead of what he's capable of. It's amazing to watch. Like, to just see confidence that's beyond irrational. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be fun to watch, to see what happens. But yeah, whatever they think they're getting, they're not getting. Like, I don't know what they're getting. Hopefully he can become like a great vet, but on court production, he's nowhere near $43 million. No.
I was talking to someone today, and we didn't know if he was $25 million. So he's been massively overpaid for sure. I think the Raptors made a good choice here. Their hand was sort of forced, I guess. But I was going back, and I was looking at the Darko Rajakovic hire, and there was all this talk about, oh, wow, this hire is like they can go either way. And I was very firm that this hire meant they were rebuilding, that they were retooling, and that this was about Scottie going forward. And people were just like, nope, that's not true. Well, I think it has been true. And I think that from the Raptors' perspective, right, just gauging them, seeing the draft show, seeing their spirit, their vibe, right, the energy in the
Darko
room.
went to Florida.
Darko going to Florida, all of this stuff, it's just like, okay, this feels like, okay, like when I said pivot, like when they traded DeMar, it felt like a pivot in the culture, in the development. When they fired Nick Nurse, it felt like a pivot too. It felt like a pivot back. And I'm so happy for this team that they've identified that.
We had fat cats. Yeah.
And I told someone the other day, and I'll tell you here, I don't mind if we lose 25 games next year. I don't mind if we win 25 games next year. I know we won't, but I don't mind.
No, we won't.
And we can surrender that pick, and that's okay too. Because at this point, what my eyes went through watching this terrible ass brand of basketball, as long as you tell me that this team is playing for each other, exactly, and a coach that throws their players under the bus, you know, like no passive aggressive jabs, none of that energy. It's not conducive to building men, you know, of high character.
Bigging up your players, bigging them up, lifting them up.
Yeah, holding them accountable to consistent standards, but also holding yourself accountable to consistent standards. And, you know, I think that's really important from a leadership perspective. And right now, you know, a lot of people in the media are saying, you know, why was I swear to God, I don't know where I'm hearing some of this stuff. Like, I don't know which. Am I listening to Will Liu? Am I listening to Josh Lundberg? Am I listening to, you know, this hockey guy on TSN? They all just bumble together now. They're all jumbled together because they're all saying the same thing. It's Masai's fault. It's Scottie's fault. It's this guy's fault. It's not Fred's fault. It's not Pascal's fault. They always put these guys on a different side. And to me, it's like, I don't even care if Pascal's traded at this point.
No, I
he
don't.
Could be traded. He could come back. If he comes back, I hope he buys in. If he's traded, I hope he gets something for him. I have
cool either
no
way, yeah.
investment in him getting traded. Trust me, I don't care. Like, I feel about him getting traded the way I feel about Chris Boucher getting traded, Thaddeus Young getting traded. I have nothing. I'm not saying that I don't like the guys. I'm not saying that I love them. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. There's nothing there emotionally.
We've watched this movie so many times. We're just kind of done with it.
Right. So, trust me. Like,
it's like we'll play it in the background and just let it run.
Yeah. So, like, for me, it's like, look, like, to me, like, at this point, it's Scottie, OG, Christian Coloco. Like, that's where I'm at. Right. If you told me, if you told me Gradey Dick was being moved, I was like,
I got into an argument with someone. They're like, "Oh, Scottie might not be ready." And it's like, okay, we tried DeMar. We saw what DeMar was, right? We know who DeMar is. We tried that. We know who Pascal is. We tried that. We know who Fred is. We tried that. Can we now just can we see who Scottie is? Can we try that, or are we just gonna bang our heads against the wall with what we know doesn't work? Like, I don't know what the fear is. Where's the fear? We won 41 games.
I think it's worth noting also that you don't want to necessarily put Scottie in a Detroit situation, because he is someone. I mean, granted, I think he'll be fine, and he's a big boy now. Like, he's in, I was going to say he's in third grade. He's in his third year, so obviously, like, I think he'll be fine regardless of what they do. I think he'll manage to keep the spirits up, and he'll manage to help the guys grow and stuff. But him talking about a leadership role is great. But I know that this guy doesn't like losing. He's never liked losing. He hasn't lost very much in his life, right? He hasn't lost a lot of pickup games. He hasn't lost a lot of AAU games. He hasn't lost a lot of high school games. So for him, losing is tough. And you can see it on his face after a game. When he loses, it's really tough on him. So you don't want to put this guy through the meat grinder of a 60-loss season. You just don't. I don't. I would prefer that you don't make losing a part of the culture here, because you've already had a lack of development. You've already had losing a lot of free agents. You already have you're in Canada factor. You already have the high taxes. Do you really want to add, they're also a 60-loss team now? I think it's tough. I think you're on a finicky place, and I totally understand this from a business perspective. MLSE made so much money on the Raptors championship. So much, right? I think we can agree.
That, by the way, the bubble really ruined their honeymoon tour.
It did.
That really ruined them, because we went to the second round. And if we had home court, I think we beat Boston in the second round. And then who knows what happens from there?
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifism there, right? Like, because they were fully willing, at least at the time, it seemed fully willing and invested in the idea of Pascal Siakam being that guy. Like, they held him out of trade talks, for OKC. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, okay, like, there was some serious hope that this 24-year-old can take a massive step up. Maybe, to some extent, it was a little bit like the hope they have in Scottie right now, but probably a little bit muted. And he'd won a championship, and he was a really big part of that championship. He started on that championship team. So it's something that you can carry forward. Obviously, to any fan who really follows the game, this is a little bit like following the Bulls after Jordan retired, right? It's a little bit like that. Like, it's still the Bulls. They're still winning a lot of games, but number 23 is not there anymore. Number 2 wasn't there anymore.
And Kukoc is the future kind of thing.
Yeah. And then Jordan comes back. Like, if Kawhi came back and Pascal was here, I think things would be a different vibe. But yeah, like, so I think it's just one of those things where you have to take a clean break. But I understand why that clean break is so scary, because you're completely ripping the fabric of the most valuable thing you've ever done to this franchise, next to drafting Vince Carter, right? I'm gonna bring Christian on as well, and we're gonna cap this off. We're gonna cap this conversation off in 17 minutes. Christian, what's up, man?
Hey, fellas, how you guys doing?
I'm good.
All right. Well, I was listening to you guys talk for a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally cool with Scottie being point guard and everything, but like, when it gets to like just trading Siakam for just like those trades you mentioned earlier, I didn't like any of them. Personally, I just I'd rather a better return for Siakam. It's just like, it sounds like after we trade Siakam, like, what's the expectation for the team?
Do you want a better return than Andrew Nembhard,
You don't
Buddy
like
Hield?
That's good.
And Miles Turner. I think you're really underrating Miles Turner. He's a much better defender and a much better shooter than Pascal
We just signed
Siakam.
Poeltl to a 4-year deal, though.
Okay, so you want to sign Siakam to a max?
I think
no, but like, what's the point of trading Siakam to get Turner?
He's on an expiring.
So is
Something has
Buddy
to be done
Hield.
at some point.
So is
No,
Buddy
that's fair.
Hield.
Look, I did two polls on Instagram, and they got hundreds of poll results, and I want to share what they were. We lost Coach Mo. So the two polls were as follows. I showed people the roster of the 2020-2021 Raptors. Wait, it was the 2021-2022 Raptors. That was the team that won 48 wins, right? That was the team that lost to Philadelphia. I showed everyone the roster, a roster which included guys like Freddie Gillespie and guys like Malachi Flynn, obviously, guys like Svi Mihailik and Yuta Watanabe and Goran Dragic for a little bit and Thaddeus Young towards the end. And then I asked people, do you think the current roster with Pascal, with OG, with Scottie, with Gary, with Jakob is better than that team?
Yeah, I do.
88% of people agreed with that.
I agree. But that changes if you trade Siakam, though.
Not necessarily. Depends on what you get back for him. I think Miles Turner plus Buddy Hield plus Andrew Nembhard makes you a much better team.
It just the fit doesn't make sense at all. Like, so we can't trade Poeltl until like what, February? Let's say that trade goes down. We can't trade Poeltl till like what, February? So like we're stuck with two centers for paying them both $20 million.
I mean, okay. So here's the question: what does Miles Turner do as a center that's center-ish to you, right? Like he can stand. Like if he's a center, what's Karl Anthony Towns?
I understand that, but you're playing both of them at the same time.
You can stagger their minutes. I'm not suggesting you bench one, but I'm saying like, yeah, it's a tough fit for sure, right? And maybe you have to do something with a third team. I don't know.
Yeah, and then like I like getting Buddy Hield, but that's like he's on a 1-year contract. We might end up losing him.
So what do you not like about this one, the Bogdanovich, Okongwu, and AJ Griffin trade? I think you get so much shooting back, and Onyeka Okongwu is a really good player. I like him a lot.
I like that trade better. It's just, I don't know. I'd rather if Deontay didn't sign that contract. As soon as he signed that contract, I don't want anything to do with Atlanta anymore. Like, no,
Man,
I don't want.
If you could add Jalen Johnson or Kobe Buffkin to that deal, I think you've got a home run, man. It's not even.
I don't know. It's just like, to me, it's just like as soon as you trade Siakam, like the expectation for the team totally goes from playoff team to like totally like we don't care about, like you guys were saying, we don't care how many wins we get. We just want to play fun basketball. Like I don't know. That doesn't sound fun to me. Like, okay, it'd be fun to watch, but like I don't want to watch a fun team win 30 games, type of thing.
Would you rather watch a depressing team win 41 games? Because we just watched it.
I'd rather watch a depressing team win 48 games.
Really?
Like I think this team, as constructed right now, could win like 48 wins.
Honestly, man, like
currently constructed as right now.
Right, but okay. So I'll paint you two scenarios. Scenario number one: you win 38, right, and you play the kids a lot. You play through Scottie a lot. He makes a lot of mistakes. He has a lot of growing pains, but he ends the season as a much better player. You have a much clearer direction of your future. He takes a step. You see the next step that he possibly could take. Gradey gets minutes. Christian Koloko gets minutes. Precious develops. That's one scenario, but it's 38 wins. Scenario number two, 48 wins. You play Thaddeus Young and Otto Porter a lot more than you should. You play Jakob Poeltl like 35 minutes a night. You play Pascal 38 minutes a night. Scottie's used more as a screener, rover type of player. You don't let him get on the ball a lot. Somewhere mid-season, you bench Gary, you starting Dennis Schroeder at the 1, and you somehow win 48 games. Which of those would you prefer?
Okay. First, see, I don't think like you can win 48 games in a different way. It doesn't have to be that exact scenario.
You can win 48 wins in like 5 different ways. But I'm saying like if the guys who are leading you are 29 and 30 and they're leading you to 48 wins, you know what I mean? Like what's the upside here? Like you squander a lot by like
I understand. I understand what you mean, but like the scenario you're pointing out is not that realistic.
Why not?
Like you pretty much heard the coach. Like with Siakam or without Siakam, Scottie's gonna have the ball in his hands. So like
I've heard that before. I heard that last year, and it didn't happen
because
the minute it looked bad, Fred took over and Nick let it happen. But like,
and those two guys are gone.
They're not gone. Siakam's still here.
Okay, I don't think Siakam was a problem with that. I've always said like Siakam like that. I don't think who's point guard really affects Siakam. Like I still think he's still gonna get his shots. I don't think he's really concerned about who the starting point guard is. Obviously, Fred's his friend and he's been here longer, but like I don't think if Scottie's the starting point guard or Fred's the starting point guard, I don't think that affects. Like he's still going to be the leading shot getter on the team with either point guard. So like I don't think he really cares.
Here's the thing
about that personally.
So I don't know if you watched that neuroscience video that I released today, or if you had time or interest in it. But one of the things that Catherine pointed out, and it was a really good point, she said reps and trying things, setting benchmarks, failing at benchmarks is such an important thing for development. It is important for Scottie to take 23, 24 shots per game, regardless of what Twitter and Reddit think about it. It doesn't really matter. And it's important for him to have a 4 for 24 night like he did last year, like he had like some disastrous, he had a game winner that didn't go in, or he had a really tough, basket that bounces out against Atlanta, right? Those moments have to happen. And they have to happen very quickly in an athlete's career. You cannot wait till 27, 28 to start putting that on him, because he hasn't had that at any point in his career. Like he hasn't been the guy, at high level competition. He's always been a guy. And to give this guy, when you don't have a championship window, the chance to do that, I think is important. So I feel that it's a clear opportunity to give him that window with guys like Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, Andrew Nembhard, who are naturally not looking for max contracts next year, right? They're not like the type to hijack offenses. They're all really team first guys, and I think that that's important. You need to remove the cogs from his way. And yeah, there's a prevailing thought process that, he should have to take it. He should have to take it. He should have to beat out this guy. Like, it's so weird how the benchmark has swung, right? I was listening to Willu talk about this, and they're just like, I think we can all agree that Fred and Pascal are not really superstars. So if Scottie can't even take it from them, what does that say? And it's like, bro, like we are like 7 months removed from you telling me Pascal was an MVP.
I just don't like the whole idea of like we're continuing trying to pit like Scottie against, like before it was Scottie and Fred. Now we're trying to do like Scottie on Siakam.
It's not. There's no pitting. There's no pitting against. Where are you getting that from?
That's
can I hop in? Can I hop in for 1 second here?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's pitting either. I think it's two guys whose games are pretty similar, and Scottie has the potential. It's just potential as of right now, but it looks like body wise, physicality wise, it looks like he has the potential of being a better version of Pascal, right? And so trying to get these guys to coalesce on the same court together with Jakob Poeltl and like all these other guys that can't space for them is just like, I think they need to. I think they fully expect that even if they do a Pascal trade, that they're going to quote unquote lose the trade to some degree and take a step back. I think they've been hesitant to sort of go in that direction because they're, again, quote unquote, a winning franchise. But I think the writing's on the wall. Like, I like Pascal. I think he's a really good player, and I think the next team that he goes to is going to be better for him being on the team. And I think that the Raptors are probably going to be worse for him leaving the team, but it's kind of got to happen. You can't have two guys that do the same thing that don't space the court.
First of all, I don't think they do the same thing, but I totally see your point, right? Like I do. And the whole like better version of Pascal or worse version of Pascal thing is totally fair, because when you look at their strengths and weaknesses, they're very, very comparable, right? But the one thing I'll say to Christian's point about like pitting this guy against this guy, there's really nothing being pitted against. Like I don't get where that charge comes from. I didn't say you know, they hate each other, they don't like each other, they can't be in the same team together, one guy's derailing another guy. I didn't say any of that. Like, I'm just saying straight up, if you're trying to build a team around this guy long term, then these early reps, they really matter. It's a really good thing that the Raptors put the ball in Vince's hands and said, go get us something, right? Now, you can say Vince was further along than Scottie. Fine. I would say Scottie's much further along as a playmaker and a defender than Vince was. So it's like, which part of the game do you want to develop? All of the reps, all of the skills training that he's doing as a trainer, he needs in-game reps to do this. He doesn't need any more Scottie plays small ball center crap. Like that shit is not helping because he's done it. He's been through that. He did it for the team. He's always like, he'll jump fucking center for you and bang his body. Like he'll take injuries guarding, DeAndre
I
Ayton.
understand that, but like to me, okay, the reason like I said like the whole, sorry to interrupt you, but like the reason why I said the whole like pitting against, because like the two scenarios you pointed out is like if we're going for like 48 wins, that means that we're holding Scottie back. That's kind of like the way you pointed out, kind of. By saying
No, that's not what I said. You're putting the cart and the horse in reverse. I said if you get 48 wins and the cost of 48 wins is you held him back, is that better than 38 wins and not holding him back? I didn't say you can't win 48 games and he can thrive. Yeah, sure. There's a version of reality where he and Pascal both initiate the offense, both make all-star teams, and you win 50 games. Sure, that's a pathway, possibly. I find that that's going to be really difficult with the other three guys that they're going to be sharing the court with, though, because it's really difficult.
That's the pathway I would rather, personally. Honestly, that's just the pathway I'd rather do.
But I don't think that that's a realistic pathway. Having these two guys with Jakob Poeltl on the court, unless the other two guys are Steph and Clay, like you're going to have some spacing issues on this team. You have massive spacing issues. You also have a place on the court that is typically designated for your star, superstar, most gifted player, which is the center of the court around the high post, pinch post. I want Scottie in that spot. I think he surveys the court, sees the court really well from there. You know, can Pascal be a spacer and an off-ball mover? Can he do that? Can he be more of a secondary creator? Would he accept that in a contract year? Like the human element of this is so fucking real. Like, I was bringing this up last year with Fred VanVleet. It's like, bro, like it's entrapment. Like we can vilify him now. We can hate him. We can talk shit about him. But this is entrapment. You putting someone in a do or die situation with generational money on the line, and you're saying, I dare you to hijack this offense for your fucking stats. And he's going to do it. Of course he's going to do it. So you're telling me Pascal won't do it?
we just saw it happen with Fred, and it's in line for it to happen again this year with Pascal.
Yeah, and this is not a charge against Pascal. It's not saying like, oh, Pascal's a bad guy or Pascal's selfish. This is human nature.
No,
like,
totally.
Like he deserves, okay. So Christian, I tell you, if you were Pascal Siakam, you're the max guy. You're eligible for a super max. You know, if you make All NBA, you're going to make super max. There's a 21-year-old player that you're better than for sure. Pascal's better than Scottie. No questions asked. It's your time right now. It's your turn. You've been promised this. Everyone build this up to this. This is your team now. They traded your best friend away on the team. He's gone. They traded your coach away. He's gone. They fired your trainer. He's gone. You're here. Now you're going to play second fiddle to Scottie as he initiates the offense?
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, I don't see him buying into that. Not happening.
I don't think so.
That's like him giving away money.
Also, if they win at the beginning, I think it's easy to buy into if they're winning. But if they, like you say, if they start at 0-5, then you might have to seriously consider like trading them or something like that. But like I think if you start out the season like winning with him and Scottie leading this offense,
who's trading people 5 games into the season?
Or
how often do you see that happen?
Or like how long did it take for him to trade Rudy Gay? That was like not even 20 games into the season.
That's a totally different situation. You traded him for scraps. You traded him for nothing. I mean, that nothing turned out to be something. You want to trade Pascal Siakam for a whole bunch of role players? Yeah, you can get that trade anytime you want.
Though you just offered a whole bunch of role players for him,
bro. You are not comparing Miles Turner to fucking Chuck Hayes.
No,
I'm not.
You got nothing back for Rudy Gay.
I think you're gonna get better.
Also, Nembhard. Also, Nembhard is going to be a good player in this.
Buddy Hield is a starter. Andrew Nembhard put up like a 30-point triple double as a rookie against Golden State in Oracle. Miles Turner is like a near, like he's one of the top 7 centers in the league and was one of the best 5 defenders in the NBA last year. Like, we're not talking about trading him. I didn't say trade him for George Niang and Davis Bertans, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's a totally different situation. Now, I'm also
starters.
Pardon?
I still think they'll be able to get that type of value, like 20 games.
But how many teams are willing to disrupt? Like, you're talking about, okay, we're going to be 0-5. We're going to look to trade him. But maybe the other team that you want to trade with isn't 0-5, and they're doing fine. Maybe they're 5-0, and they're doing well with Miles Turner. You think they're just going to disrupt everything? I mean, if the value is equivalent, you need to do this trade now, or you need to do it at the deadline. And at the deadline, he's a half-year rental, and he's already telling people he's not going to. Like, I'm getting tired, yo. Like, I'm getting tired of warning this fan base about what's coming 2 years from now, having everyone call me crazy in the moment, saying I'm being wrong, and then it happening, and then no one remembering I said it. Like, it's maybe a little egotistical, but for me, it's getting really annoying to just
also,
be like,
I'm sorry to say, I think they waited too long already. I think his value is dropping by the day, and they should have done it last year for sure. At least for sure at the trade deadline, if not at the beginning of the season.
Because right now
it was hard to see.
Yeah, he's able to just basically say, I'm not going to extend, and boom, trade value halved. Who's trading for this guy?
I'm just going to have to agree with you guys, because I just personally, I can't like put expectations to go into a season. Yeah, we're going to play beautiful basketball, but we might just win 35 games. I have to have high expectations going into a season personally for me. Like, so I'd rather.
I mean, what the fuck does the win total even matter? If you're not winning a championship, what does the matter? Like, we got to start thinking about this in 5-year terms. We can't think about this in 1-year terms, right? Like, sorry, I think we lost Christian. I don't know if he left or if he got disconnected. But we can't think about this in like, like this year, this month. And that's the problem we got into last year. How do you convince a NBA champion to tank? Was the quote from Bobby Webster, right?
Yeah.
Well, like, that's the problem. Like, there's a bigger vision here. The culture, all the talk now we hear about culture, fit, organizational accountability, changing the vibes. This is all 5-year vision, 10-year vision stuff, building back the program. Like, this is how good organizations think. Terrible organizations always try to win the day. As an organization, you must try to think. Like, I know it's impossible to plan out 10 years ahead. It's just impossible and unrealistic. But I don't think like it's unrealistic to try to plan out in 3 and 5 year windows, you know, and good teams usually do.
And also, if you like for the team, like if Fred and Pascal were like Clay and Steph, then you have no problems telling Scottie, buddy, you're gonna have to wait your turn. Right, we have these ultra super duper stars on one ultra super duper star, and then one also very proven playoff performer. You know, you're gonna have to wait your turn, like Kuminga, right? Like they're not letting Kuminga like take reps over Steph.
They give him plenty of reps, just to be fair. They're young players. They let Jordan Poole come right in and be like a 25 point per game scorer. Like, they had no qualms about it. That team is built unselfish. They let Andrew Wiggins come and like dominate entire games with possessions. Like, Steph is not selfish. He clearly has not a selfish bone in his body. Clay sometimes is, and Draymond sometimes is, like, more as a personality as opposed to a player. But that coach does not accept selfish basketball. And so, look, to Christian's point, and I know he's not here to really address it, but like, to me, I would rather watch this team win 30 games beautifully than watch them win 45 games ugly, right? Like, I don't need to watch starters being grinded into the ground 42 minutes, veterans playing over, you know, the younger kids. I don't care, because nothing that this team does is winning a championship next year. Nothing.
No, totally.
So we got to think like, let's try to aim for extending or opening a window in like 2026.
Right.
That should be the goal. Now, for that goal to work, Christian Koloko has to become a stretch big who has to work out for you. Precious Achiuwa has to become more than a sometimes player. Like, and by sometimes, I mean once every 3 games, he's all right.
Right.
OG Anunoby has to graduate to at least one of the best third options in the NBA, if not a passable second option. And in order to do that, he's going to have to become much better at initiating his offense. Scottie Barnes has to become so much more assertive. He has to get game reps. He has to get comfortable taking, major possessions. He has to be comfortable taking tough shots. I think someone else on your team has to develop. Gary, in an unprecedented way, or Gradey have to become better playmakers. These things have to happen. But in order for these things, like, how are you supposed to get these things to happen if they cannot happen in the game? If one guy, like maybe Pascal, or there's really nobody else left. It's just Pascal, right? This is not an agenda against Pascal or Gary, because they're both in contract years. If Gary doesn't get an extension, he's in a contract year too. If those two guys take 95% of your shots, 95% of your playmaking possessions or 95% of your offensive load or whatever. I know it's impossible for them to take that big, but if they take that big apart and you somehow manage to win 42 games and these other guys just kind of got shafted in the offense, I have an issue with that for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement for sure. I think Pascal's got a, I feel bad. I really hope Christian didn't hang up because he was upset. I don't think
I have no idea. I have no idea. I sense that maybe he was frustrated because he felt like maybe, I don't know, he came with I'm pitting Scottie against Pascal, which is a charge that I'm familiar with, but I really resent that charge because it's not true.
That's not how it works. It's not like if their vibe is adversarial in nature, it's just because here Scotty's the new kid on the block, newish kid on the block. And we've seen the Pascal running the show before, so, and we know that it doesn't work, and there's no evidence to suggest that next year would be any different with him running the show without Fred and with this new rookie and whatever. So you rip the Band-Aid off clean right now. You get whatever assets you can. I don't think that Indiana trade is actually available for us. I think teams around the league see what's going on, and I think
I think he's become so underrated, man. Like when I hear other fan bases talking about him, like, oh, I wouldn't go with this guy and this guy. I'm just like, are you mad? Like, are you mental?
100%.
Like he would actually catapult you to championship contender, but it's
Pascal is an excellent player. He's an excellent player, and if he's on the right, he's got the right pieces around him. He's a fucking weapon, a serious weapon.
Put him in Golden State, and I think they repeat.
Oh my God, that was my first thought. Would Golden State be amenable to what's his name, Kuminga and stuff for Pascal? Right,
Kuminga and stuff. I don't like Kuminga, man, at all. I can't stand him. I can't stand his game. I just don't like it. I actually, weirdly enough, like none of their young prospects excite me. Maybe Pajimski and Moses Moody. Kuminga is like, to me, just like, I don't like his feel for the game. I love his athleticism. I love the highlights, but I don't like his feel for the game. So I think you're getting another kind of Precious Achua situation going on.
No, he's better than Precious. For sure, he's better than Precious. I think, anyway. From what I've seen, he's got he's got the athleticism thing for sure, which makes up for a lot of warts. But I think he's got a little bit more game than you might be giving him credit for.
No, he's got game. Like in terms of eye test, he's got game. Like he's got a bag, like a little bit of a bag. He does like some interesting dribble counters that makes you look like, maybe he has some clue about what he's doing on offense, man. But dude, like still a 23rd percentile offensive player and a 38th percentile defensive player. Like he's bad for a guy who's 22. Now, like, is he 22 or 21? I think he's 22. So
I just mean if you're looking for young pieces to install into your core for the future, like he's not a bad place to start. Like, are there other guys? Like,
I think they're looking for shooting, man. I think they're looking for shooting. If you want to look at number one, if you want to look at what does the Delano move say to you? Because I certainly think that he had enough potential to hang on to as a prospect. Right.
Yeah.
As you like, you have so many two-way spots now. I'm not suggesting you make one two-way, but like your 15th guy, you can't keep Delano Banton. He's like Rexdale and everything. Like there's a connection to this guy here. Marketability, a little bit of marketability is still something, but like you don't keep him. He's homegrown. You let him go. I know they don't like doing that. They like having Canadian guys on this team for sure. There was a long time ago where they didn't want Canadian guys on this team, and then they just flipped. And I don't know when that flip happened, but it fucking flipped. And then suddenly they wanted nothing but Canadian guys. They wanted Boucher, Birch, O'Shea. They got like fucking. They're just like shit. This is a pipeline. We got like a country that's really good at basketball. So
yeah, but they didn't get any of the good ones. They didn't get
fair.
They didn't get Wiggins. They didn't get.
They tried to get Shea like really badly.
Yeah, true.
The year they got Kawhi, they were trying to trade for Shea. They offered anything on the roster.
Yeah, they only want the Canadian guys with Shea in their names: Boucher, Shea, and O'Shea.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's stupid. Yeah, I'm being dumb. Yeah, I think they got to take an L. I think they got to sacrifice them to. I know this would probably break Christian's heart, and it would kind of break mine too, because I know whatever team they trade him to, if they decide to do it, Pascal's gonna fucking come out like a monster against the Raptors when they play, and especially if it's a really good team that has some loaded pieces to surround him. Oof, that's gonna be bad. But like, I don't like when it sort of gets when the picture gets painted that like we're now pitting these guys against each other. There's a natural
there's nothing
order
adversarial
to
about
building.
it. Yeah. It's like when he said that Jakob, like how are you supposed to play Jakob and Miles Turner, right? That would be like me saying you're pitting Miles Turner and Jakob Poeltl against each other. Like he's not. No. It's just a really logical question to ask. How are you supposed to play two power forwards? The question here is, I asked all of our Instagram followers, we got 182 to 200 responses to this. What is the type of player you would build like next to Pascal Siakam? Right. I think you probably saw this poll as well.
Yeah.
And the leading answer was a stretch big.
Yeah, I put
stretch big.
Yeah.
And that was the number one guy. So it's like, okay, would you, like, if character issues were not a concern, would you trade Pascal for someone like Karl-Anthony Towns? Just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Defensively, you might be terrible, and the fit next to Jakob is absolutely abhorrent. But then that begs the bigger question. It's like, why is Jakob Poeltl on a team where your central focus is building around a really tall playmaker like Scottie Barnes, who needs nothing but shooters around him, right? So now you're trying to pivot away from a strategy, and it just feels very weird. And I feel like, maybe some of the criticism has been overblown for this team, but I also feel some of it is very warranted, because you do have this sort of like two teams, and they're like, there's one that's being built around Pascal, and then there's another one that's sneakily being built around Scottie, and they're both the same team, and they do not work, and they do not make sense. And it's just like, okay, like, yeah, I understand in theory that Jakob Poeltl does a lot of really great things off the basketball that make up for his lack of shooting. But in an ideal world, with all the centers in the NBA that you could have traded a pick plus Kem Birch plus 2 seconds for, this was the guy that you had to make that move for at that time. That to me signals you were on Fred and Pascal's timeline a little bit. You wanted to give them something. And now you're like, okay, let's pivot. We're going to draft a shooter. We're going to sign shooters. Everyone's going to be a shooter. Okay. Well, but now you're compensating for one of the biggest non-shooters in the NBA clogging up the middle and having to play 28 minutes because he's just that damn good. It's such a weird roster construction. I don't know what I would do. And that's maybe like, and I'm like one of those people where, like, if I enter a space and I don't know what to do, my first instinct is to empty the space.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's too many variables right now. Smart. And I just want to take everything out and then start putting things back. And yeah, you don't take out everything. You leave the one thing in the corner that's definitely not moving, like your bed. And then you take everything else out and you're like, okay, now let's see what needs to go back. Right now, there's just like a hodgepodge of everything. There's like cabinets all over the place. There's files all over the place. It's like, okay, bro, this is overwhelming. We need some clear perspective on what we're doing here, and we need to really understand. Now, I know that I think, and you probably think, and a lot of people think that Scottie is definitely going to be the guy, But dude, if he doesn't turn out to be the guy, you're dead in the water. You have put everything into this guy's the guy.
True.
You've lost Fred VanVleet. You've moved multiple draft picks. You have completely depleted your talent resources at the end of the bench. All those guys who were coming up. You possibly about to extend Pascal Siakam to a very large contract. I mean, and Scottie's at the point in his career right now where if you don't find out he's the guy right now, you still have to extend him close to a max.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because someone is going to pay this guy like $37 million, $36 million a year. And if you don't even know what you got in him, and you're going to have to match it because he's going to be a restricted free agent, you have to find out. Like, there's no other pathway forward. You have to find out.
They are in a tight situation. I think that, like, even you had presented a trade for Pascal earlier in the year, and just to preface that, I really hope that the Karl Towns thing is not actually a thing.
I really hope not to. I can't stand that.
And Karl Towns on this team would essentially be the exact same as Pascal, insofar as that maybe you'll get 3 or 4 more wins, and you're still going to not be anywhere close to serious contender.
I don't know if you get more wins. He's a worse playmaker. He's a worse defender. He's probably a better-ish shot blocker and paint defender. He's a much better shooter. He's his self-proclaimed the greatest big man shooter of all time. And I find it very difficult to argue with that thought process. He's amazing.
Yes, but shooter. He's a fantastic shooter.
But mentally, I question. Like,
I honestly think he's like one of the lowest IQ basketball IQ players in the league,
really?
If not the lowest. Yes, he's terrible. Like, I've watched him specifically. Like, I've watched games, especially playoff games, where I only watch him moving around the court. And dude, you would not believe, like, if you've ever practiced this asinine activity, do it. It's funny. It's funny. The guy does not know where the fuck to be. He doesn't know what to do. He's like putting his hands up in the air and like moving laterally, like walking into guys, getting willy-nilly fouls. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing on the court, especially on defense. And then on
his
offense,
defensive IQ is very low.
Yeah, and then on offense, he's like this irrational confidence guy that you can tell he's huffing and puffing. He's super tired, but he wants to be the guy that takes the winning shot. You're like, bro, like, if you're tired, give it up. You have fucking Anthony Edwards on us. That guy's not getting tired. Give him the ball. Like, Jesus. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope that that's not a thing. But you had presented an Atlanta trade a while ago. I want to say it was like a couple months ago, where you weren't even including DeJounte. It was like draft picks and I think Bogey and Griffin,
Onyeka.
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I've wanted these 3 players for a really long time. Onyeka, Okongwu, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and AJ Griffin. I really like all 3. I've liked them since their draft cycles. I've seen nothing in the NBA level that makes me move off of them. And I think especially with AJ and with Bogdan, like these 2 guys specifically, like if you want a Scottie-centric offense, you need guys who can just sort of loosely create and shoot. Like, contrary to popular belief, you can't just put 4 guys who just shoot around him. You need other things. Obviously, you need 100%. Defenders. You need guys who are like strong point of attack defenders, paint defenders. He can be a part of like a really good defensive system. I don't know if he can be your defensive system. Like, he's not Draymond.
Right.
But on offense, I think he can be the engine to spark a really great offense. But that offense needs to be fast. That offense needs to be athletic. That offense needs to feature at least 2 really good shooters.
Yeah.
So when I think of an ideal team to put around Scottie Barnes, here's what that team looks like. Nick Claxton at the 4, Miles Turner at the 5, Mikal Bridges at the 3, Klay Thompson at 2.
Yeah, sure. That would be a fantastic team to put around.
Or maybe Tyrese Maxey at 2.
Right.
Or Andrew Wiggins at 2. Something like that. Like, that's the type of team I would put around him. Like, I would put a long, athletic, well-shooting team around him that knows how to get out in transition. And people may not assume, obviously correctly, that Klay Thompson is some bursty athlete, which he's certainly not. But he is deadly in transition. Like, he can kill you like 45 feet from the basket.
Right.
So, or Damian Lillard, in place of Tyrese Maxey, because he also has range out to like 45 feet.
Sure.
What I need is space. You know,
Right.
I need space with this guy. And too often, I think we get so bogged down in what he can't do in the half court. He can't do this in the half court. He can't do that in the half court. How's he supposed to run a high pick and roll? Blah, blah, blah. Completely, number one, forgetting the fact that he's done it his whole life.
Right.
So he can totally do it. Just because he can't do it exactly the way Fred does doesn't mean he can't do it better than Fred. And we've never seen him have an entire season to prove it. Let's wait for that. But the other part of this is, why do we always judge the half court offense if that's his weakness? I mean, he's going to be a beast in transition. You know, some of his ability to just initiate the offense like right at the rebound. And like, unlike a lot of those guys who grab the rebound and then take it up themselves, like he will pitch it ahead. He's done it so many times. And guys will just be leaking out. And it's like, if you can put athletes and shooters around this guy, like amazing. You know what I mean? So I'm struggling to comprehend, like, apart from the obvious paint protection element on defense and the paint finishing element on offense, what does Jakob Poeltl give you that a faster, twitchier, perhaps rangier athlete might not have given you? Someone like a Miles Turner.
Right. Well, the obvious answer is shooting.
Jakob Poeltl doesn't give you, like, I mean, Jakob Poeltl gives you better paint.
Oh, sorry, right. Sorry,
other way around.
You asked the reverse. I think that Miles Turner, I honestly, it's just in the same way that you can put OG Anunoby on any team and they'll instantly become better, dependent, like doesn't matter about fit. Miles Turner is that exact same guy, and I think because of that, he's actually, like, people usually rank him like top 10 best center. I think because of his ability, his malleability, that brings him up into, like, I think he's better than Karl Anthony Towns. I think I think nobody in the world would say that he's a better player than Karl Anthony Towns, but like for the modern NBA, he's 100% better than a Karl Anthony Towns.
I think Jakob Poeltl and Miles Turner are both arguably top 10 centers. They're just very different types of very different types of centers. They do their damage in very different places, like on the basketball court, right? Their strengths, they're both remarkably efficient.
Right.
Okay, here's something crazy for you. Jakob Poeltl's true shooting percentage last year was 63.5%. What do you think Miles Turner's was?
Probably a little lower, maybe 59. Oh wait, no, actually, sorry, I correct that. I think it's around the same, if not higher.
It's higher.
Is it 65, something like that?
65.1, exactly.
Crazy.
He had a higher free throw rate. But what he doesn't do is the exchange. Because he takes so many threes, he has a 3-point attempt rate of 37%. He's just not the offensive rebounder he is. Right. But he's so much more portable. Jakob Poeltl is one of the least portable players in the NBA because you always need to put 4 shooters around him. You can't play 100%. Jakob Poeltl without shooters. The ideal team for Jakob Poeltl, ironically, is a team like
the Golden State Warriors.
Indiana, which is just all shooters. You have Buddy Hield, Andrew Nebard, Ben Mathurin, Tyrese Halliburton. These are all shooters.
Right.
So this is a great fit. These are great trade partners. Obviously, they're both around the same age as well. They're both 25, 26 years old, or 26, 27 years old now. They're both really good defenders. Miles Turner is a bit more of a shot blocker, right? Jakob Poeltl is a bit more of a rebounder. Yeah. So, yeah. And I mean, Jakob has much more of a presence in terms of off-ball deflections and stuff. So it's close. It's close. Yeah. He's a little bit more versatile too. Just a little bit. Not by much.
Do you think that he was... So I have a couple questions. Do you think that he was blindsided is not the right term, but we'll say, for lack of a better term, blindsided by the fact that Fred left? So, yeah, you think he signed that contract assuming Fred was going to get signed again?
Yeah, I do. And I think, like, for all the foibles, or not foibles, the fears and trepidations about how well he fits with Scottie, he is a really good player. Like, he is a really good player. He definitely moves the 100%. Needle for you. For me, at least 5 wins. Like, he definitely helps. Kareem coming on, I think. Kareem, what's up? Hello?
I'm still here.
Yeah, Kareem, your mic is off. Yeah, so I mean, I think. Hey, what's up, Kareem?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Yeah, just
Hey, what's up, Kareem?
just wanted to join it.
On this conversation. Yeah, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Miles Turner, Jakob Poeltl, Pascal Siakam vortex that we're in right now?
I just think you need to have a floor spacing 5 if you have Scottie. I just think it's just so obvious.
There aren't many of them though, unfortunately. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Koloko can turn into one.
Hopefully Koloko can turn into one, yeah. But I wonder, okay, so we've talked about the starting lineup. What's your closing lineup? Because you know what? OG Anunoby can play small ball 5. That may not impress anybody. Pascal Siakam can also play small ball 5. Is it possible, just like with last year, that the Raptors are just simply going to open halves very strong with Jakob, but then by the end of the game, he's on the bench? And
100%.
if so, who's the starter who's coming into that starting lineup? I think that second starter probably be Dennis Schroeder, or if Gradey Dick evolves very much so, maybe Gradey Dick, because Dennis Schroeder is not quite the defender.
I think it would be Dennis, Gary, Dick, OG, and Scottie. I think that's who it would be. Assuming Pascal's not on the team.
Right. So maybe it should be Precious. Now you go real Vision 6'9", eh?
Right.
Like if
Precious instead of Schroeder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a real Vision 6'9" lineup that can actually work. Maybe. At the 1, Scottie. At the 2, Gradey. At the 3, OG. At the 4, Siakam. At the 5, Precious. If Gradey and Precious evolve, that to me is like, you got showtime, baby. Because now, Precious has, at least for 3 months, shot 39% from 3. So he can do that. If he can figure out some of that, pick and roll shit that he had going at some point, if he can figure out the shooting, he's a great, you don't have any non-shooters anymore now. So
when did he shoot 39% from 3?
So for an entire 3-month stretch after the All-Star break in 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
On a pretty decent volume. It wasn't like he was taking 1 a game, it was pretty frequent. He was just feeling himself from 3, and that was around when Fred was gone, right? So I have a feeling, and this is just an opinion, and I've noticed it with the numbers on teammates' passes from Scottie. People tend to shoot better when Scottie's on the ball. They just tend to be better. He doesn't create as much space for them when he's off the ball. When he's on the ball and he's the one doing the passing, and he's the one, who's in charge of delivering the ball from the hand that is holding it to the hand that's shooting it. It seems like some part of him, tonight, Marquis Noel showed me a little bit of Scottie Barnes in terms of his passing. That one to Ron Harper Jr. in the corner really reminded me. I was like, oh my God, that's the type of pass Scottie would throw. And it hit him right in his pocket. And you could tell the second he decided to take that shot, that was going in. A couple of passes tonight weren't like that. So I just think that there's a really big difference between, number one, getting a pass from a passer who is actually passing you correctly, passing to the right person. The other thing is the defense didn't really move when Fred drove. It didn't shift the defense. When I go back and I study tape of Fred VanVleet's biggest games or even his worst games, you notice that the type of reaction that the defense gives a John Morant drive. Now, I don't mean to compare him to one of the biggest, driving threats in the league or paint pressure, rim pressure guards. But even if you notice, a guy like Jalen Brunson, they react to it. They send help, they rotate. Something happens to the defense that's supposed to move the pieces, that's supposed to expose the gap. The whole game of a point guard initiating the offense is that the minute you receive that screen, it's a chess match. It's a chess match of 3, 4, 5 moves, and then boom, mate. You got to mate, every single time. And the problem with Fred is just he's moving one pawn at a time. He's going in the right direction,
but nobody cares.
No.
Right?
I think it was part of the game plan to sort of let him do that. Right? He doesn't have.
But that's
like,
a terrible thing. It doesn't do anything for your defense. It doesn't do anything for your offense.
Yeah.
Like
he
if,
doesn't have this. Yeah.
Like if I were to run,
yeah.
like I'm not saying like I finish anywhere close to as well as Fred, but let's just say I decided to, I don't know, I want to make a Wish Foundation, guest appearance on the Raptors offense, right? Yeah. So let's just say I drove the ball every single time, and by some miracle my handle was tight enough that I never got stripped. Nobody would care. One defender would guard me the entire way through. I wouldn't be able to shed my defender, thus not creating the opening. Like tonight, you saw like Marquis Noel get past this guy and then force the second defender. You can't just not get by your defender. You know what I mean? Like you can't run an offense to a guy who can't beat his guy off the dribble. And so basically what was happening all year early on was Christian Koloko was setting the best screens he could as a rookie, or Scottie would set the best screens that he could. And Fred was getting like, I don't know, like an inch to 2 inch, let's just say a half a second to a quarter second of space. Right. Because NBA defenders are huge and Fred is small. And so if the screen was successful, then Fred VanVleet was probably taking a lightly contested 2 or 3. Or he was deking out the defense, to use a term in hockey. Like, he was faking out the defense and he was somehow finding a way to go to drive. But too often that drive was not creating the type of openings on the rest of the court.
Right.
And then more often than not, he's not finding the right guy. So every time we reference, Fred VanVleet drove the ball X number of times a game. And it's just like, this is like saying I bang my head on the wall 25 times a game. We're not questioning the validity of whether he should have been doing it in the first place. So it's like if Scottie, and it's ironically, it's right back to the Christian question. It's like, do things the right way or do things for the numbers. Yes, it'd be really encouraging if Scottie could drive the ball 18 times a game, 15 times a game, 10 times a game. But would it mean anything to me if he was 38% at the rim? It wouldn't mean shit to me because eventually teams will understand you can't hit layups and they'll stop guarding you because you're not a threat. Right. You can't not be a threat to score and expect the defense to give a shit about you, Yeah, and it's like for Scottie, it's like his gravity out there is like the teams are just like, yeah, go ahead, bro. Like there's nothing Scottie can do right now. It's so frustrating for him too, right? Because he's not a scrub. Like if he was a scrub, they would definitely guard him out there a little bit because they would be hoping for a turnover.
Right.
But he's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing I'll push back on with Scottie though is that while he may not have like the lightning quick speed when he drives to get to the bucket and finish, what he often does is he turns those into kind of like he'll start to drive and then he'll turn around and sort of back his man down. And oftentimes if he's got a smaller guy on him, he could just turn it into a little jump hook or some sort of something off the glass. And Fred just didn't have that. That wasn't an option for him, right? His only counter option was like a fadeaway midi, which had like, I don't know, a 30% chance of going in or something.
I think the other thing is also like he can still see over his defender regardless of who his defender is. So
totally.
So the and it's just the acuity with which he would throw the pass, the player he would pass to, the always the threat to be able to score in the paint. Like if you're a defense, you're not giving up 56%, 57% layup in the paint, even contested. Like you will double that. And the other thing with Scottie is now that you not play Fred, because you can't play Fred because you're on another team, there's always going to be somebody who's 5 to 6 inches shorter than somebody on the team. I mean, there's some really big teams like Orlando, but they're not good teams right now. The vast majority of teams have at least one guy who's 6'1". The Cavaliers have 2 guys.
Yeah.
Now, I do question how the hell Scottie and Gary and OG are supposed to stay in front of Darius Garland and, Donovan Mitchell. Sure. This is going to be a miracle in itself. Sure. But I also question how those 2 guys are going to guard these guys because that's not easy either.
Well, I guess the hope or like the theory behind it is that even if, so let's say you have OG on Darius Garland, obviously quick twitch guard that can get into the lane, hit floaters, hit threes if he decides to step back. Right. So you have OG sort of, at least if OG breaks down to some degree, you have some sort of protection in Yak and Scottie and other lengthy guys like Precious behind him. So again, a theoretical. I think if we were to play the Cavs in a 7-game series right now, it may not go so well for us. But
yeah, I agree.
That's the theory behind it anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, Kareem, do you have any final thoughts? I'm gonna close the live, because it's past midnight.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm just very excited to watch Scottie with the ball in his hands. I really, really love that comment you made about Fred, how, people always say, he drove 12 times, but, the drives weren't going anywhere. And, I just hope that, Scottie can, probably put up 10 plus drives a game. And I think, if the handle can tighten up, he can really, really do a lot of damage this year, because he's going to be able to finish at the rim. He's going to be able to hit the weak side corner on those passes, and he's gonna have the lob to Koloko. Just the handle is just, it all rides on the handle.
Yeah, I think the Raptors will have to be a transition team. They're gonna have to be a team that gets out and runs. They're gonna have to be a team that gets a lot of early opportunities. And then they're going to have to be a team that's very disciplined and unselfish in the half court. And I think that's, if they play hard on defense, they run at every opportunity on offense, and they play unselfish basketball in the half court, then they will be successful this year. It's very simple, actually. I know it sounds very complicated when we start talking about player types meshing together with this and that, but the theory is very simple, actually. You're bigger than most teams. You're better defensively than most teams. Right? You probably are younger than most teams as well. I mean, just across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And, I still think there's a lot of talent here. We talk about Gary Trent Jr. in a completely different way because of how he was treated last year and how his season went. We talk about Scottie in a different way because of how his season went. And I think sometimes we become very much prisoners of the moment. Guys get paid right after a big playoff run. They get screwed out of a contract right after a big playoff failure. At the end of the day, it's just two games. Like, we discard 82 games for 2 games, but it's like, oh, those are the 2 games that counted. No, they're just the 2 games we remember. So I think that, it's very difficult. And every time someone brings up, Scottie's last year, they always say, oh, he plateaued. He didn't take a step forward. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. And I just think that there's such a gap in critical evaluation that is missing in terms of what it's like to play on a team where the offense is almost tailor-made to screw you over, or what it feels like to play on a team where you simply don't get the ball in transition the way you want it to. And then the times you did get the ball and all your high usage and high shot attempt moments were actually when you were injured. And the crazy thing to me is, when people address this stuff, right? To me, it's very simple to spot the deception and spot the dishonesty when people are talking about various people. So, for instance, when Fred was injured, and we all accept that he was injured in the playoffs, right? There was no allegedly he was injured. There was no I think he was injured. There was no kind of injured. He was injured. He couldn't play. He was injured, right?
Right.
But with Scottie, whenever they talk about it, they always talk about it as he was kind of injured. Right. He was sort of injured. Ankle sprain is ankle sprain. I sprained my ankle. I didn't walk properly for a month. This guy sprained an ankle. He came back in 4 games. So the wincing is unless you think he's making it up. I watched him in all of high school. I never saw him, every second game, he's just grabbing his ankle, falling down. I never saw that in my life. So this is completely new behavior, apparently, So it's weird to me how we're able to treat a 21-year-old with this intense scrutiny about allegedly he was injured. He was kind of injured. He was hurt a little bit. It's no, man. The team diagnosed him with a sprained ankle. He missed multiple games. He came back early because his team was struggling and because Pascal Siakam was struggling. I think somebody went out with the injury, and it was just he really felt the need to keep going through it. And Siakam was already out, if you recall. And maybe he was coasting a little bit. Maybe he was. Yeah. But I don't blame him. He had a massive role on offense and defense. He probably thought, hey, and even today when he was asked in Summer League, what are you looking to do? He didn't say, I'm looking to take over the team. He didn't say, I'm looking to take 25 shots a game. He said, I'm just looking to win. He wants to win. He wants to win basketball games, and that should be commendable. And, if you're not right physically, if you're not physically right and you're not trusting your ankle and you've rushed it back to be able to help your team because your backup isn't as good as you are on a busted ankle, maybe you don't feel comfortable driving into the paint 25 times a game or 20 times a game or 10 times a game. Maybe because that's where all those injuries happened.
Right.
Every time you drove, every time you charged up. You know, there were a couple times this year where I just sensed him get mad and he hit it into another gear. Do you remember that? Like a few times this year where it was just like, it just felt like he had a little extra juice in his legs. And then he was just getting past guys. But then a lot of times this year, his legs felt heavy. His legs felt like really heavy and slow, right? And I think like,
I think the lack of morale around the team added to the heaviness of the legs, and like, you know, it's natural that you would know from your psychology talk today, right? That the psychology takes over. It takes over the body sometimes, right? And so
it certainly can. You know, the science on this is completely undefeated, that the mind certainly impacts the body impacts the mind. There is like a great link between both. But yeah, anyways, I too am looking forward to next year, regardless of what may come, regardless of, you know, what people say. I'm totally cool if there's not a good package out there that fits for Pascal Siakam, happily come back. But if whoever comes back to this team has to buy into this team. That includes Scottie, that includes OG, that includes Gary, everyone. There can be no more bet on yourself, and there can be no more, yeah, I'll do it as long as we don't lose 5 straight games, because that's a tremendous amount of pressure. And to be honest, like, it's just not necessary. And the reason that I wanted to get ahead of the story, and, you know, I'm complaining so much about the media, is not because I necessarily enjoy or get any joy in listening to Will Lou and commenting on the things that he's saying. It's rather because I fully understand the story that they're trying to frame up for 3 months from now, when this team struggles, to be able to say, see, it wasn't them. And then everyone's going to feel crazy. Because if this team legitimately like loses Fred and Pascal, and then they go 0-10 to start the season, like, you realize the story has already been written, right? It's done. But now if they come out like 8-0, the other story is also done too. So really, the only thing we can do to avoid the printing of a lot of non-stupid stories is 4-4. We need to aim for 4-4, because God forbid if we get an extreme outcome one way or the other way. And typically speaking, teams with new coaches, I don't think they do too well, right? There's always an adjustment period. So I'm glad that all the guys down in Vegas right now, for the most part, most of the guys are down there. I'm glad that they're doing some reps with him. I'm glad that they're building up some team chemistry. I think that it's really important to do that, you know. But at the end of the day, like, you know, I don't want this team to come out 0-4 and then decide they're going to trade Siakam, because then it makes sense, because then you won't have options. And I also don't want this team to start out 0-4 and then suddenly everyone's playing the blame game that we were playing last year again, of like, see, it wasn't Fred's fault, it's Pascal's fault. It's actually Pascal's fault, or it's Scottie's fault, or it's OG's fault. It doesn't, because you know, like, there's this old saying in Yugoslavia, when you shed blood on the land, it lasts for 6 generations.
Right.
But typically there is always a tit for tat. There's like a my guy, your guy, whatever. So there is always going to be a cost for conflict that extends beyond conflict. And I think that that's one of my deeper non-basketball takes that I could probably extend into this. But it's true. You know, I'm still dealing with people that hated my dad. He's been dead for almost 20 years. I still deal with these people. Like, I still deal with the backlash of that. So that element of, you did my guy dirty, you ran my guy out of town, now watch what I do to your guy, that element, that pettiness is still there, right? So really the only thing that can turn that around is a relentless course of winning for the next 8 years, right? Like 60 win seasons from here on out. Scottie leads the way, and then people will be like, oh, right, Showtime in Toronto, I was wrong. But anything short of that, I tell you, Scottie could fucking average 20 points a game next year, and I guarantee you they're still going to be able to point to, okay, well, his defense sagged, 3-point shooting still hasn't come, still Ben Simmons. It's always an uphill battle with this guy, with these guys, man.
If they can even, like, let's say they do trade Pascal for young pieces, if they can get to 500, or even just a little lower than 500, despite the fact that it's a losing season, that doesn't mean Scottie will, in that context, will be a losing player. He always makes winning plays. That's all he does.
Tell that to people who think Dame Lillard is a losing player because he hasn't won a championship.
Oh, I read one comment. Dude, those guys are fucking. They're like casuals. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Western
Did you
Conference
see?
Finals. It's so hard to win in the NBA. People don't appreciate it because we're Raptor fans, you know? And the problem is, like, most of us, I don't know most of us, but a lot of us have actually sat through like a 24, 25 win season.
Right.
Let me know in the
certainly-
chat if
I
you sat
certainly
through a
have.
24 win season. It's not fun.
Dude, I was a season ticket holder during those. Like
Oh my God.
I've seen the worst of the worst. I've been in the lean years, the Jose Calderon, fucking Andrea Bargnani years. I've seen it. What's the Mo Pete years? Like before Chris Bosh.
Mo Pete had some good times. Come on.
Yeah. No. I'm not disparaging Mo Pete. I'm just saying it was like his team. If it's his team back then, you're not getting very far.
You're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble
Did
if
you?
it's it.
Sorry, I know you want to split real quick. Did you see that? I sent you a link to a video by the Score saying
Yes.
it was Cacharo, saying that they should trade Scottie for Dame right now. Thoughts? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it. And that's what I was addressing. It's like there's a wide conspiracy. I don't want to say a conspiracy. There is a wide consensus among the people who write in this city, with the exception of, and I think probably correctly, I'm going to exclude Eric Kareen from this because I don't really want to say bad things about Eric Kareen. I like him. But apart from him, like, it's like every single person seems to be in the, let's try to trade Scottie for Dame.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, why? What are you getting from that? So you compare a 33-year-old guy with a 29-year-old guy, give yourself a 1 to 2 year window. I tell you, playoff failure is a massive part about about playoff success. You have to have at least one burn, usually in the playoffs as a team, before you win. That's what makes the Raptors championship with Kawhi so rare.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you had like run with the rest of those guys, but Danny, Kawhi, and Marcus Noel, those were all new guys. They'd never failed with you before. So that is unprecedented that you win a championship in your first year with that guy, because I tell you, the playoff scars are a massive predictor of playoff success. So it's with Dame and Siakam and whatever the hell else they got here, most of these guys never been to the playoffs. Most of these guys haven't been to the playoffs together. If you trade for these guys, I mean, you take 1 year off of Dame's career immediately because it'll be a playoff failure or a playoff miss, and then you open your window. You open your window when Dame is 35.
Right.
And Pascal's 31. And you're capped out. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. And what makes me saddest about, the Score is, like, it's different when Josh Lewinberg puts out a tweet, because I know that took him 22 seconds. I know that. It's different when someone writes an article. I know that took like a couple of hours, maybe. Like Doug Smith, he probably takes about 12 minutes to write his articles, right?
Yeah.
But to someone to make a video, do you know how many times I've tried to make a video, put it into the edit, and realized it was probably a bad idea? Like, I just cooled off my initial take, and I was just like, nah, don't do this, right? Don't make this video. This is a dumb idea. This won't age well. This is probably incorrect. When you're making a video, you have so many stages that you can get off that idea. So many times when you can examine your initial gut punch of like, hey, Dame's available, let's trade Scottie for him. And then you get to scripting the video, and then you record the video, and then you actually you start editing the video. And at no point in that fucking 40-hour process did you ever realize it was completely idiotic.
Right.
That's the most astonishing part about this whole thing.
Man, it's so funny that you say that, because I'm sure you didn't read the comments within that video, but my first comment was, I can't believe the Score signed off on this video. Just because it's not just one guy. It's not just Joseph Cacharo that is in charge of that. I'm sure they have a team. I'm sure they have a team of people that need to sign off on these things, and nobody stopped them and be like, come on, dude. Like, I understand that we need to create content here. We have to get the conversation going, but come on, this is ridiculous.
Here's the other problem, and this is like where I think Pensar basketball, sometimes either gets in trouble or gets fans, depending on how you feel about me saying this stuff. But here is something that you're not going to hear on another channel, but you'll hear it here. How much pressure do you put on a 21-year-old
when you start trying to galvanize or motivate a fan base to either get on or get off the idea of trading him for top 10 players of all time. And then when he doesn't become as good as those top 10 players that year, because he's 21 and they're 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and clearly more experienced and better players than him, then you start getting upset and you bring it up all the time. We could have had KD. We could have had KD. We could have had KD. How many times you probably heard that? How many times did I watch a fucking video of Scottie Barnes or in his comment section on his YouTube thing, you're not KD? Like, bro, that's so like, I mean, imagine if fucking, you know, Seattle fans or OKC fans had done this to Kevin Durant. Oh, you're not LeBron. You're not Dirk. Like, but this didn't happen. You know, so I'm glad that the Raptors are just coming out and saying, you know, we're building around this guy. Just shut up about it. You know, like we're not going to do this because that can be there's not only pressure for the athlete, but it's also pressure for the fans, you know, and for the fans' perspective, I understand it. You know, you're watching Kevin Durant, he's putting up 50 points. You're watching Scottie Barnes, he's putting up 5 points. You don't understand why you don't have the other guy and your team is losing and you're upset. And you're obviously not going to be upset at yourself. You're not going to be like, oh my God, I need to lose weight, quit smoking, get my life in order. You're not going to do that. So you're going to get mad at who are you going to get mad at? 21-year-olds. You're going to get mad at him for not being Kevin Durant. And it's stupid. And now you're going to get mad at him for not being Dame Lillard.
And now you could do is like for the people who are all pissy that they didn't flip Scottie and stuff for KD last year. Is just okay. Well, let's say they did that. What would have happened last year? KD would have got hurt in fucking warm-ups, right? Never been the same player. And then that's one more year washed. And plus you've given up valuable assets and your potential future. And now KD is a year older.
I would much rather give up those valuable assets in my future for Jakob Poeltl. You're right. My bad.
But Ching, bro, you know what's so funny? Every time you're about to finish up a video, I know that if I just bring up one more point, you're just so passionate about it that you'll keep going for another 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I have no regard for my sleep. I am a zombie. I am operating. You know, so FA, I don't know if he's here. He came to Canada. Do you know this? So he came to Canada and he messaged me. He's like, yo, bro, we got to meet up. So I meet him after 1 hour of sleep because I spent all night editing that video with Catherine. I was like trying to whittle it down, trying to get all the gaps out. And it's so frustrating because it's like, it was 2 hours and I cut it down to an hour and 4 minutes and I did the intro.
Yeah.
And obviously the more you haven't slept, the slower you start to work. So it's a bit of a compounding, you know, snowball effect. And so it's like 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock, I'm done. And I'm supposed to meet him at 10 o'clock. So I'm like, okay, let's sleep for an hour, go meet him, go release the video, do some Twitter stuff, watch this, you know, summer league thing, talk to my girlfriend for a bit, then do this live. And now I'm like, yo, I have slept close to 7 hours in the last 4 days. How can I even be alive right now? I don't even know. So this is like it's like I need to start sleeping because I'm not taking care of myself at all.
Okay, I'm gonna stop roping you in, bro.
Yeah,
it's too easy, but I love it. It just shows your passion for the subject and I think your subscriber counts are going up and there's a obvious reason for that. So you're doing great, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. And it was really cool meeting FA. So I met FA this morning for
nice.
10 minutes. He drove from Whitby to the airport and he met me on the way. He was just like,
nice.
You know, and so I met with him for 10 minutes and it was really funny. I've never felt like a celebrity before, but he kind of made me feel like one for a minute. Because I guess like all of our interaction has been through a screen. So he FaceTimed his brother, Paul. Right.
Oh, nice.
And so he's just like, you're not going to believe who I'm with. And we're just like at McDonald's, we're sitting outside. I'm having my iced coffee. And I was just like, hey. And he's like, wow. And I was just like, yo, is this what Al Pacino feels like all the time? And it's like, that is what Al Pacino feels like all the time. So thank you, FA, for giving me like 1 minute to be like Al Pacino. But yeah, it was really cool. It was really nice to meet him for the first time.
Nice. Yeah, take him to the Global Jam if he's still around.
Gone. He's leaving today. He's already gone. He's gone back to North Carolina. But yeah. Anyway, guys, take care. Have a good one. Talk to y'all later. Kareem, thanks a lot for calling in. I hope you'll call in again, and maybe we'll have even more to talk about then. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Care,
all right,
boys.
guys. Cheers. Have a good one. Good night.
Ciao.
Yep. I want to respond very quickly to Rank Scrub and Jonathan Convoy. Jonathan, thank you so much for the super chat. I did not have a chance to properly acknowledge this at the time. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. And Rank Scrub, could we trade Pascal, Flynn, Thad for Harris, Maxey, Reed out of Philly? Would Nurse want Pascal next to Embiid, and does that actually work? So for me, Maxey, like, this is a decent trade, and I totally understand it. But you got to understand at this point, Flynn and Thad don't have a lot of value. Reed has some value. Harris, I think, is an expiring, if I'm not mistaken. If he's an expiring, then he has value too. If he's not an expiring, then I think he has 2 more years left. And Maxey has a lot of value for whatever reason. Agree with it or disagree with it. He's not a great defender. He's a great shooter. And, he's still 21, 22 years old. It's very young. So I'm inclined to believe that unless this comes with Pascal extending, that this may be off the table. I've met people who, over the last week, who think that maybe Philly is a dark horse for Dame and Tyrese Maxey is the main piece they're talking about. This package is what's being proposed for Dame. So if you believe that Dame and Pascal have equivalent value around the NBA, which may be true because Dame is just much older, and much more expensive, but he's also tied up to a long-term contract. Pascal's on the expiring. There's all this buzz about him not willing to resign. So I'm not really sure this deal works. Anyways, I apologize that I missed the super chat. I realized even last time that you had sent a super chat and I had missed it. So I just wanted to acknowledge and say thank you right at the end. And yeah, to everyone who's stuck with us, 237 of you, 300 of you that were in here at one point, thank you so much. I apologize again. I'm like very, very sleepy. So I hope that the content flowed and that it made sense and that it wasn't very rambly, but I apologize if it was probably a little bit rambly. It's 3 hours of rambling. But yeah, take care. See you guys. Good catch, Vince. Good catch. I don't know if Reed is a free agent off the top of my head, but if he is, then yeah. Alrighty, guys. And if you're a night owl and you're looking for something really interesting to watch, I highly suggest watching the neuroscience video that we dropped today. It's really informative, and I think you'll learn a lot. Peace.